Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Reap the Spoils. I'm Mark Sullivan.
I'm Delilah Lugo.
And I'm Jason Kwasnicki.
Get yourself strapped in. This one's gonna be a doozy. Reap the Spoils is a monthly spoiler cast where we all play a game, we all come back and talk about it and spoil the hell out of it. So it's ideal that if you're coming to this episode, the game that's in the title of the episode, you've played that game, you're coming here and you're listening to us spoil that game, but like we're not spoiling the game for you. You're listening to our discussion of this game. In this game, we're going to have a lot to spoil and discuss. So I can't stop you if you haven't played the game, keep listening on, whatever, but I implore you to pause the episode, go play the game, and then come back to us. Delilah, what game are we talking about today?
Elden Ring.
Rise Tarnished. We are talking about Elden Ring.
It's Rise ye tarnished. Okay.
No, it's
Get it
not.
right. Yes, it is. It's ye tarnished.
It can be. Okay,
Uh-oh.
look, on
This
my
is already off to a good start.
On my PlayStation 5, when you hover over the Elden Ring tile on the screen with the splash screen with the tarnished with the sword at the bottom, it says Rise Tarnished. Okay.
Oh, I was just talking about the dialogue in the opening cutscene when you start.
Rise Tarnished is in the marketing somewhere. Just saying. Another thing I meant to bring up at the top of the show, if you are a regular listener of Reap the Spoils, I do want to implore you to please rate and review the show, like and subscribe on YouTube, and to share the show with anybody you think might enjoy us. We really, really appreciate it. Just want to put that at the top. I will, circle back to that again at the back of the episode.
Yes.
Anyway, Elden Ring. Like I said, buckle up, kids, because this is a rough one. This is going to be a long episode. There's going to be lots of lore discussion, more lore discussion than any other game we've ever talked about, because this is the game that conveys, I feel, most of its story through its lore.
For sure.
So this is going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about all endings, not just one of them.
Yeah, we're going to talk about every goddamn one of them. So yeah, are we ready for a history lesson to get started with this?
Sure.
A brief history lesson. So I didn't actually know this. Development for Elden Ring began in 2017. This game was actually developed alongside Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice.
Yep.
Which I didn't realize. What was that?
It was announced so fast after Sekiro came out.
Yeah. Sekiro came out in 2019. I think like February 2019. Like it was pretty early in the year, if I remember correctly. And this game was announced or revealed at E3 2019, so it would have been a couple months later on Xbox's stage. I found it also interesting, Miyazaki's list of influences for this game I wanted to share. From a gameplay perspective, this game was influenced by Shadow of the Colossus, The Elder Scrolls, The Witcher 3, and to no surprise, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which I'm sure we'll be making plenty of comparisons to later. Story-wise, lots of inspiration came from RuneQuest, The Lord of the Rings, and The Eternal Champion, which I'm sure is something Jason's very familiar with.
I'm not sure if he's referencing something to do with Elric of Melnimene, who is an Eternal Champion in Michael Moorcock's Multiverse.
I think this was the book that came out before Elric was the book that introduced Elric. If from my brief, very small foray into researching,
the first Elric was originally a series of short stories. They were pulp stories in the 60s, and then they became collected into books in chronological order later on.
Got it. Well, this is the Moorcock novel that he was influenced by. Just
there are also multiple Eternal Champions. There's one for each universe in his multiverse. I
think this was the book,
and Elric is one of them.
This was the book called The Eternal Champion that released, I think, in 1974, from what I remember.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So yeah, these are the things that he was influenced by. Also,
when I read this and you wrote it, I thought it was the video game.
What video game?
Eternal Champions video game.
Is that a video game?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a fighter from the Sega days, if I'm not mistaken.
Now I gotta look this up. Eternal Champions. Oh yeah, 1993. Eternal Champions for the Sega Genesis.
I was just like, that's weird. That's like
what a strange influence.
a Mortal Kombat-esque kind of game, but yeah.
But
Okay.
it actually makes sense that he said that, because I actually mentioned this to you guys
Yeah.
in our chat, how I saw a lot of the Elric cosmology in this game's lore, and actually thinking about it with the Lord of the Rings, I can actually see with all the demigods and the parallels to the Valor and how the demigods were created. But we can get into that later if
Yeah,
you really want to.
we'll get into it. I figured it would make a lot of sense to you when I bring it up. So I felt these influences were really interesting, and I can kind of see them on the back of this game's hand. So I really wanted to list them out for the audience and for you guys. Also of note, this game was announced to be in collaboration and the world building written by George Railroad Martin of Game of Thrones fame. George R.R. Martin. That was just a bad joke. So yeah, we'll talk more about that too.
It's not a bad joke. He's just a big boy now that sits on his pile of money and buys railroads.
He sits on
without finishing, the books that everybody paid him money for.
He sits on his copper throne, as it were.
Yeah,
his iron throne. So yeah, this game was revealed E3 2019. And then it was radio silence for like 2 years. There was like no news about this game until June 2021. To the point where this is something I really want to talk about when we start talking about theories and stuff. The community got so restless waiting for news about this game, they started making their own shit up just based on that initial trailer.
Yeah.
And I find that to be so hilarious and kind of sad at the same time. But it's really funny that like this that started permeating also for Final Fantasy 16, a game that we just recently got another trailer for, but also had a long spout of silence, so people just started making shit up.
I wish I had the time.
Yeah, who has the time for that? Like, why? Just wait, play another game. Jesus Christ. Anyway, so yeah, thought I'd bring that up. This game was originally scheduled to release on January 21st, 2022, and it was delayed and ultimately came out on February 25th, 2022. A week after a game that we already covered, Horizon Forbidden West.
Which is funny because everybody forgot about that. Damn, yeah. I'm sorry, Guerrilla Games. You guys got to pick better fucking release dates.
Well, it's so ironic that like
stay away from February.
Well, it's ironic because the Horizon Zero Dawn came out a week before Breath of the Wild, and now Horizon Forbidden West has come out a week before a game heavily influenced by Breath of the Wild. So it's just really funny to me. It's like
and there's gonna be a Horizon 3 already, so
yeah.
What juggernaut is going to overshadow the third one?
We'll see when the untitled sequel to Breath of the Wild decides to come out, supposedly next year, but we'll see. So yeah, that's the brief history lesson of Elden Ring. I don't want to dilly-dally. I don't want to dawdle. Are we ready to jump into this beast of a game?
Yes.
Or should I say this Elden beast of a game?
I get it.
Okay, so we're gonna do something a little different here. I have a very long list of major story points. I'm gonna read them out one by one, and we're gonna jump in and talk about anything specific that we want to talk about. If we want to elaborate on one of these story beats, we can. If you guys want to throw it out in theory, I didn't really do much theory digging. I'll be honest. I don't care much for theories.
Yeah, I also didn't dig around for theories. I just listened to people who pulled lore that was concretely from like writings and dialogue in the game, and I'll just list them. Arlum Grim and Vati Vidya, I think, did the best jobs in kind of like separating what was their theory versus like their lore.
Yeah, I listened to those guys' videos along with guys like Radagast. Ratakasker, I don't know how you pronounce it.
Ratatosker?
Ratatosker, yeah.
The Greek
YouTube,
or the Norse being?
Yeah, probably. I don't remember the exact spelling of the YouTube channel. There were a bunch of different channels. I listened to a bunch of different theories, but at the end of the day, when it came to theories about the plot of this game, I ended up not caring, and I'll talk about that more later.
Yeah, I came up with my own theory based on lore that I heard from videos, and also when I played the second game, the game the second time around on the PS4 because I had to get both
Yeah.
platinums. I
You
kind of
had
Oh my
like
to.
god!
You
Oh,
had
listened
to.
you
deeper
had
into
to.
it. Yeah, I had to. I really love this game, but we'll talk about it. Yeah.
Marika compelled her, took her under her
Mm.
control.
Ronnie had me. It was Ronnie.
Brought you on as their consort. Like, you must.
I find it funny you immediately went into a subsequent playthrough, and after finishing this game, all I wanted to do was play Dark Souls, which again I'll talk about later.
Oh, after this game, all I wanted to do was literally play anything else. So it's great how we all had drastically different feelings upon beating this.
Well, to be clear, I didn't play it immediately. I did take a break and played a couple of other games in between.
Yeah,
But then
that's
I
true.
was like, I miss it again, and I went back like a crazy person.
That was all of 24 hours. No, I'm just kidding. All right. This is your last warning. We're about to spoil the lore and story for Elden Ring, so go play the game. We'll meet you back in like 200 hours when you inevitably beat it. I'm just kidding. It only took me about 115, but you know.
It took me 200, but that's because I like explored the world on my own and then did
Yeah.
cleanup with a guide. Whereas if I would have
Yeah,
had
well,
like a guide the whole time, it would have took me like that
it
time.
It
took me.
took it
I
took me 70, but like I stopped doing a lot of
Yeah.
The
the
optional stuff.
the optional open world type stuff. I did almost all of like the side quests and whatnot, but like in terms of like randomized dungeons and stuff, procedural, I stopped doing it like halfway through.
There were no procedural dungeons.
Or
I
I'm
think
sorry, not procedural. Like they were basically reusing assets
Oh
for like the
yeah,
open
well
world. Yeah,
yeah, and that's something that I definitely do want to talk about when we get to like design of like the dungeons and stuff. Um, but yeah, it took like following a guide to get and find everything. I didn't do any guiding or anything when it came to bosses. I did most of that on my own. With like just some guidance from you guys, really. You guys were the most helpful with the places that I got stuck. Um, but like following a guide to find everything, 115 hours for me.
yeah. I would actually recommend to anybody who is listening and hasn't played the game and just doesn't care about spoilers. I would actually recommend not playing this game with any sort of guide whatsoever. I feel like it's because at some point you start feeling like you are playing the guide, not playing the game.
yeah,
But that's
that's
just my two
why
cents.
yeah, that's why like I thought my strategy of like exploring each region
Yeah,
naturally just to get that like exploration feel
Yeah,
really
but
helped. But then when it comes to like me and Mark are trophy hunters, and also like you will miss side quests and stuff if you don't follow a guide. It does like take away from the exploration a little bit. So I like if you have the time, which I know like Mark doesn't, but like if you do have the time to like explore and then use a guide for cleanup as you finish the region, I found that to be a really like good experience,
we'll
but
talk.
lengthy.
we'll discuss this later when we talk
Yeah,
about
because
gameplay and design.
there's an important bit that I want to bring up about all of this and why I had no qualms using a guide right from the get go to find things. We'll circle back to that when we talk
And I
design.
think I'll agree with what you're going to say.
But let's get into this massive amount of lore. So like I said, yeah, I'm gonna go down bit by bit. Okay, we're just gonna roll right in, roll right along, and if there's anything you guys want to add or embellish, let's do it. Let's talk it all through, because it's a lot, and we don't have an infinite amount of time to talk about this.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. Okay, so we're gonna start off with the inciting incident of all this whole world. Okay. An outer god, a celestial entity, the greater will, the outer god of order, creates the Elden Ring and bestows it upon Marika of the Newman land. Gives the Elden Ring to her, and it ascends her to godhood. Jason, I know you really want to talk about the celestial gods.
Well, this was the most interesting part, the cosmology of this universe, and it goes back to what we were discussing earlier with the influence of Michael Moorcock's writing.
Yeah.
Because Michael Moorcock was kind of the first, this was one of his big contributions to the fantasy genre. He was one of the first fantasy writers to introduce, rather than a dichotomy of good and evil, order and chaos. It's actually Michael Moorcock who invented what we now think of as the chaos symbol. If you're familiar with Warhammer, you see it all the time. It's the circle with all the lines going through it. Michael Moorcock actually scribbled it on a napkin and gave it to the guy drawing for his pulp books when he was writing the Elric series.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea that things are not split into good and evil, there's order and there's chaos, and the greater will in this game definitely seems to be the god of order, and we'll discuss later another outer god, one of these space creatures that seems to definitely be the representation of chaos. And it's interesting because just like in Michael Moorcock's writing, there's good and evil on both sides of that coin.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, if there's nothing else to add on that, we'll roll right into the next bit. That's that with Marika becoming an Empyrean, which I guess they didn't really like quite explain what it means to be an Empyrean, and I just kind of equated it to being like a special type of god.
Yes,
Yeah, there.
you have to be like quote unquote pure, like born of a god. It's weird, and it makes more sense when you learn the twist later that we'll get into of America's counterpart.
Yeah,
But
which we'll learn very
yeah,
momentarily within the next point. It's the next one I was going to bring up. Go ahead.
but basically, like an Empyrean is like a pure blood god.
You were born from like one god, but it also makes certain things that were told in this game a little questionable, which we'll get
Yes,
into.
Well, it makes, I think, Marika's origin kind of questionable. She
Right.
was just a Newman woman that was given this Elden Ring that then ascended her to godhood. She's not really born of a god. She was just kind of made one.
Right. Yeah, they don't ever talk about like who her parent was or whatever.
Right. Like her as far as we know, her origin is just she's just a normal ass lady that gets chosen
yeah. She
arbitrarily.
came from Newman, was like a warrior that apparently earned
I don't even know
the
if we know
Elden Ring.
that much. I
Well,
mean,
we know she's Newman. We know
but
that.
yeah, we know
Yeah,
she's Newman, but I don't know. We don't know much about her
yeah.
past, other than we just know, as far as I can tell, we just know that she was arbitrarily chosen by the Greater Will to inherit the Elden Ring and
Well, I
become.
think the idea is that, yeah, I mean, we don't know why she was chosen, but the
Yeah.
Elden Ring, from what I can gather of all this, is it's made up of runes, and you can physically see that. That's what you're looking at when you look at like the game case art. That is the Elden Ring. It's all these
Yeah.
ruins, um, and each of them represents like a force of nature in the world, like a rule of reality in the lands between. So, like
Hmm.
that's why there is a rune of death. It is
Mm-hmm.
the law of that everybody dies. That, as we'll learn later, gets removed from the equation so nobody can die.
Hey, speaking of the Rune of Death, so Marika as an Empyrean is given a shadow, which I guess is like something of a bodyguard. There's another
Yeah,
shadow,
they're all
another important shadow we'll bring up a little while later.
and they all take on the form of like beasts, usually some sort of wolf.
Well, I don't know if I'd call Malekith a wolf necessarily.
He was like a
Yeah,
beastman kind of, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what was interesting was finding out so Malekith is the shadow of Marika. I've seen it thrown around that he's essentially like her half brother.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but uh, yeah, he's like very beast like, and it was interesting finding out that the beast clergyman Garank is Malekith,
Yeah.
yeah,
just under a different moniker. There's a lot of characters that have multiple identities in this game.
and
Like this one specifically.
it's also implied. I mean, they're obviously not blood related, but the character that you mentioned that will bring up Blythe, who is Ronnie's shadow, is she was raised with him, and he considers himself to be her brother.
Yeah,
So
because
there's
like
that
a
aspect.
shadow is basically assigned as soon as like someone becomes an Empyrean, I think. So
Yeah,
and like they're tied to their essence, and like there's like that hidden rule that like should their the shadows, like, what do you want to call them, partner, watchful person, whatever.
Baleful shadow.
Yeah, should they betray the Golden Order in any way, it drives the shadow to like go insane, which is
What
what we'll
happened to
talk
Blade?
about.
Yeah.
Yeah, like by the end, but we'll get into that when we talk more about Ronnie. With Malekith, Marika eventually gives the Rune of Death from the Elden Ring to him to safeguard, because she doesn't want Destined Death to be part of the Golden Order. so she gives it to him, and he kind of imbues his blade with it and uses it himself to, fuck shit up.
Yeah.
As we kind of find out when we
And
find
and just so people don't get confused, the Golden Order and it's basically just the will of the greater will.
Yeah, they worship.
They're
it's
all
basically like their law. It's like
yeah,
their law. It's like their Bible, basically.
Right.
or yeah, their dogma, if you will, the religious dogma.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Just a quick theory that I extracted from no one, but just reading up on the lore and seeing the parallels between Ronnie and Marika, is that Marika could have very much so been raised by Newmans and not actually like born from a Newman, which might be the case with Ronnie, where she was raised by the Carian royal family, but might, if she's an Empyrean, may have been born from just Radagon himself. So it's a theory, but yeah,
Wait,
it's just
so
interesting to think about.
I'm a little. So Ronnie
So
was.
you know how they say
elaborate on that.
America is Newman?
Yeah.
I'm saying that my theory is that they may be saying she's Newman, but she may not have been born Newman. She could have been raised by Newmans, in the same way that Ronnie was raised by the Carian royal family.
So the theory is that she was born of other gods.
If she's an Empyrean and she has to have been born from a god, right?
Yeah.
Then she could have been born from, like, I don't know, Dragon Lord Paxilus, Pasadusix. I can't even say these names.
Yeah.
Pasadusix.
Like, right, thank you. But raised by Newmans and thus identifies as Newman.
I almost prefer the idea of her just being a Newman woman that's arbitrarily given this, because it just shows how hypocritical the whole idea is,
Yeah.
The whole idea of being Empyrean, like you have to be, not unlike a lot of hypocritical factors that play into modern religion. Not to get into that conversation, but like there's a lot of I like the idea of there being hypocrisy within this Golden Order, where they have, like, in order to be Empyrean, you have to have been born of gods. But what about Marika, the ultimate Empyrean,
right,
wasn't born of gods, so that contradicts their whole rule set.
Yeah.
I kind of like that idea, just because it kind of plays with their own conventions in an interesting way. But who knows, maybe we'll learn down the line, hey, Marika actually was born of other gods and was just kind of
chosen anyway.
Yeah, chosen anyway. Or maybe that's why she was chosen, or what have you. Okay, on to the next point. And this is one of the most important things that I'll say, is that we learn that Marika and the name that we've heard, Radagon, they're actually the same person. Radagon is the male counterpart of Marika.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where a lot of this game's lore stems from, at least as far as the family trees are concerned. And it was really difficult to like kind of wrap my head around this.
Yeah.
Because you learned during I learned about this twist during Corhin's and Goldmask's side quest.
Mm-hmm.
Where in Lanedale you do the task for them, where you get the one incantation, you do it in front of the statue of Radagon, and the message changes to say Marika is Radagon. Right. And I just thought they were one and the same person. And then I start reading later, like way later, and I start finding out like they're not just the same person. Like Marika is the female half and Radagon is the male half. They're like two separate entities that are actually one being. I'm like, what?
Yeah. Which, by the way, to figure that out, you have to have like really high intelligence to use that spell. So I had to like put on one of the Burger King masks and like take one of the potions to like raise my intelligence, and it was kind of a mess. I almost respect, but I didn't go that far.
Because there's ways to just naturally raise it, so you could do it.
Yeah,
but
it's also with this stuff, for me to make the most sense out of it, it goes back to the greater will. I don't know if we have it here, but it's kind of implied that the big tree that everybody sees, the Erd tree, it's implied that it existed in the lands between before the greater will came.
Yeah.
And that the greater will kind of infected it and has been just sucking power out of it, because everything is kind of related to it.
I mean, it's interesting because we don't really... Sorry, go ahead, Jason.
All I was going to say was that would essentially just make the greater will a space parasite that's manipulating everybody to draw power from them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it wouldn't be out of the question to just think the Greater Will fucking warped America / Radagon into
Well,
whatever it needed them to be.
it's kind of interesting. I feel like we
Interesting.
don't really know even the origins of the lands between. Did they exist before the Greater Will introduced the Elden Ring to Marika? Like, were
Well,
they created after that fact?
we
Like,
know that there's in Fia's quest, you meet her all the way down at
yeah,
the base, like all the way down. Is it
Deep root
Necron?
depths.
The deep root depths. Yeah,
yeah,
thank you.
mhm,
In the Safria aqueducts, and then you go down to the deep root depths. So we see like the original roots that aren't touched by the Greater Will. So it's kind
Right.
of implied that the tree was there, and it's also implied by the
yeah,
fact that Michaela grows the Halig tree, presumably to get away from like a tree that could replace the original Erd tree
yeah.
that's
Well,
free of the
yeah,
Greater Will.
because
Yeah.
we'll talk about that. Michaela very much like Marika eventually does opposes the Golden Order and opposes the Greater Will. But we'll touch on that later. But yeah, a very important piece of lore. Marika, Radigan, same person, just different halves of that person. This is another really interesting one that Jason, I know you told, but just before we started recording, you didn't put together until you read these notes. um Horalu becomes Godfrey and is taken as Marika's consort, her first husband, and the first Elden Lord. And they would have 3 children together, which are Godwyn, which is who is the first of the golden lineage, and then Moog and Morgot, 2 twins that are cursed with the omen, giving them like animalistic characteristics.
Horns,
And
essentially. Yeah.
yeah, and they are imprisoned and hidden beneath Lanedell in the catacombs. And part of that golden lineage with under Godwyn, it ends with Godric. And there was a lot of I know I read like a lot of confusion. Godric isn't necessarily Godwyn's son. He's just the end of that line of, of the golden lineage. There could be an infinite amount of people in between Godwyn and Godric with the name with the prefix God in their name.
Yeah.
Presumably,
Who knows? Maybe not, but I'm willing to bet yes.
there is that ever jail with what is it? How do they recycled the Godric boss fight in the Never jail? I forget what it's called. It's like Godfroy or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, it's Godfroy, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. Um, but yeah, so that's the first lineage, and I know we'll circle back with Horalu towards the end because it ties in with another character with a side quest that I thought was was given a really interesting ending that kind of made a whole lot of sense to me, even if they didn't explicitly say what I think their intention was with that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if short of anything else to add with this group, we'll talk more about Godwyn, Moog, and Morgot, soon enough. Don't you worry. I have plenty to say about them.
Oh, and by the way, if you're confused about the name conventions, normally like the letter of the first names of the kids are similar to the mom and dad, just for
Yeah.
simplicity's sake.
Which definitely helped me a lot when trying to keep things together here. And that continues on with the very next one we're going to talk about. Radigan, the male half of the Marika Radigan comedy crew. Radigan waged war against the Academy of Raya Lucaria, and several stalemates later, inconclusive ends to these battles. He renounced all aggression and married the head of the academy, the carrying queen Renala, and they had 3 children: Radon, Reichard, and Ronnie.
Yeah.
Ronnie, who I'm sure we will talk plenty about.
Yeah, who, if she's an Empyrean, it wouldn't make sense if Empyrean means you're born from one god, unless she was just born from Radagon, which would make sense.
Unless Radagon got it on with himself.
Well,
That's what I mean, right?
Because if you're doing Ronnie's quest line and you find her original body,
she looked just like Radagon.
Well, her face wise, she looks like Renala, which again discredits what I just said. Like all the copies in the Renala fight that you see are supposed to be Ronnie, but her hair was originally red in her physical form,
like Radigan.
Yeah.
Okay. I also don't like. Why is Ronnie an Empyrean, but Radon and Reichard aren't? You know.
Right. Like
And as
Melania
we,
and Mikola makes sense because they were born from America and Radigan as they were one entity.
yeah,
So yeah, one god, but Ronnie it gets a little muddy.
yeah. It just what like it's not. Why does Ronnie get that status, but Radon and Reichard don't? Not that I like necessarily want them to be Empyrean. I just like the rule set doesn't quite make a whole
Right.
lot of sense.
And
But moving
once
on from.
again, sorry, there's just a
Oh, that's fine.
quick theory that
Oh yeah.
I didn't come up with myself. I can't. I think it was one of the two people I mentioned, and I thought it was interesting that the baby that Renal is holding is actually supposed to be like given to her by Radagon and might potentially like the reason why Renal is so obsessed with like creating these children is because she's trying to like bring Ronnie up, and that's why you wind up fighting like all these like failed children. And that was like his way of giving her like a god, essentially a god child. But
Yeah.
Okay.
it's a theory. It's not like I don't think anything's confirmed in text.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's implied that Radagon actually really did love Renala, and there's no real concrete reason given as to why, as we'll get to, he eventually leaves her.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about that shortly. Next point is that Godfrey was tasked with securing Marika's rule, so he warred over the lands, and once he was successful in his goal, Marika banished him from the lands between, and Godfrey became the very first tarnished,
Mm.
which are basically just people banished and exiled from the lands between. So
yeah, the I've heard that based on what Melina says to you at a campfire on the mountaintop of the giants, that's supposed to be the words of Marika, quote unquote. Basically, that once Godfrey defeated the giants for her, like the lust for battle had left his eyes, and the implication of that may be that Godfrey had become tired of battle, so she banished him and the rest of the tarnished to become
Oh,
strong again and come back.
that's
yeah,
interesting. I actually thought it was because she was like, well, I could just like bang myself and like have kids and reign power, but
Could be too.
no,
that,
Who knows?
I think that is a point that I neglected to put here, but I think Jason, I do remember that line, and I have read that a couple times. That yeah, her she part of the reason why she banished Godfrey and other tarnished was to have them conquer other lands and bring back that strength to the lands between eventually. Which actually plays out in towards the end of this discussion as to how Tarnish starts showing back up in the lands between. So we'll get to that for
Mm.
sure. Um, so after that, Radigan was called to Marika's side to kind of replace Godfrey, and he leaves Renala, which leaves her completely and utterly heartbroken.
she's sad.
She's very very sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, pour one out for the fallen homie. Um, Marika and Radigan then go on to have their own group of kids, the set of twins, both of which are cursed. Melania, who is cursed with the Scarlet Rot, and Michaela, who is cursed with eternal childhood.
Mm.
Um, I know we've been having some discourse surrounding. Well, we'll hold off on that discussion until we get to a greater point that will be coming up very very soon. Um, but after that, I have a note here. We already touched on it though. Melania, Michaela, and Ronnie are all Empyreans. It makes them eligible to be a successor to Marika. But one of them's not too happy about that, and that one's Ronnie, who fucking does not like her Empyrean lineage, who does not want to be part of this Golden Order. She wanted to rebel, and we come to learn in a very long-winded, spiderweb-esque group of side quests and areas and stuff. Ronnie orchestrated what's called the Night of Black Knives, And the basic summary of what this means is she stole a fragment of the Rune of Death from Malekith. She used it to imbue these knives. They became black knives, and provided them to Newman women that were close to Marika, who was in and of herself a Newman woman at one point. And what I gathered from reading all this, because I know we've had lots of questions, or Jason specifically has had lots of questions surrounding this, and what I'm gathering is that Ronnie, in wanting to defy or deny her own fate, deny her own, life's goal, essentially, she needed to die, but she didn't want to fully die. She wanted to keep.
Yes, she wanted her
the
spirit,
She wanted to
because
keep her spirit intact.
because that was the only way she could free herself of the greater will. Yes,
But in order to accomplish what she needed, she needed someone's body to die. My interpretation of this whole event is she sent the assassins into Landell and said, I don't care which one you kill, you just have to kill a god. Doesn't matter, I don't care who. The first one they come across, Godwin. These assassins kill Godwin's body.
or
Ronnie,
spirit.
sorry, Godwin's spirit. Yeah, my bad. They kill Godwin's spirit, leaving his body alive, but his spirit gone. And Ronnie does the opposite. She kills her body, but leaves her spirit intact. And that gives both of them one half of the curse mark of death. That allows her to then go and inhabit another body, which is a puppet made in the image of her master, the Snow Witch Rena. And Godwin is kind of just left a soulless husk of a body.
It should be mentioned here real quick that Rena was at that time at war with America. That's all of the like the Godskin apostles, basically everything that has to do with like the black flame.
Mm-hmm.
That's like Rena's faction that was fighting a war against Marika at that point, which may explain why Ronnie was so opposed to Marika and the Greater Will.
Didn't the Black Flame, I thought it was just like snow and ice and cold magics. Wasn't the Black Flame more related to Moog?
This is one of the problems, because the Black Knight, and we'll get into all this because the Black Knife assassins from Newman also use it.
Okay.
And they kill a bunch of people related to Ronnie.
This is
later
true.
on.
We'll circle back to that for sure. But yeah, so that is kind of what went down with the Night of Black Knives. Is there anything you guys want to add, challenge with that explanation, or do you think that pretty much covers it?
That pretty much covers it. Yeah.
I think that covers it. Yeah.
I will add, I'm acting purely on conjecture with the idea that they just had to kill a god, and the first one they saw was Godwin, so he was the one to get the shank. I could be completely mistaken about that. The fact of the matter is, we just don't know.
You're basically acting on everything. We know that these things happened, and it's like in a fantasy book where you don't know how the magic works. Like,
right.
She apparently needed a spirit to die and a body to die, and she did this, and that's how it works. I'm
very much taking an Occam's razor approach, where the simplest explanation is the right one until proven otherwise. If they decide to put out a lore book that says explicitly a reason for why certain events happen, I'll eat crow. That's fine. I'm going based off of what concrete details we do know and trying to come up with the simplest answer as to why those things happened. And to me, that's the simplest answer.
I agree. And the only somewhat concrete theory I can think of is if, like, Ronnie knew Godwin was, like, he really, like, was all about the Golden Order. So she was like, well, since you're about the Golden Order, you got to go, my mans, because I'm not.
That's a great reason, too. I know we were talking, separately. I'll just bring up, this is a theory. There was the theory that Marika was actually getting it on with Godwin, her first son.
Yes, I saw. I brought that theory to your guys' attention.
This theory up to me, and this was also, and alongside that theory, I believe you told me, was that Moog and Morgot were actually Godwin's kids.
Yeah, it was because of the incest gave them the omen, and I don't necessarily, like I told you guys, I don't necessarily adhere to this. I just saw this theory, and it actually helped. It made more sense to me, because that would make it a lot more understandable why Marika does what she does, as Mark will describe.
I don't I see I don't know that I agree with that. I think even if it was just her first son that died, I really it could just be that her stepdaughter betrayed her in such a way, that she just got so pissed not to mention we also have, some evidence that Marika herself had it up to here with the greater will. She had it up to here with the golden order.
Maybe.
She wasn't exactly in line with it anymore either. She was kind of questioning its motivations, its beliefs.
There's no way to know because, like I said, Ronnie was the apprentice to somebody Marika was at war with at the time, and also presumably isn't her daughter by blood. So why would she? Or again, this whole Radagon Marika thing,
Yeah,
like
I know.
it's.
It's like what's what now.
But yeah, but it's like there's no way to know just because it's so
Yeah.
convoluted.
But
Another theory I thought of is like Marika could have just been tight that like Ronnie found a way to just defy the greater will. And maybe
mhm.
like she hadn't realized that at the time that she could like just kill her off her body and keep her spirit alive so that she wouldn't be bound to this greater will in the way that she is. I mean the greater will literally like imprisoned her in the Erd tree because she took the rune of death out of it. So she was probably upset and was like, if Ronnie could do this shit, I can. Fuck this, and just shattered it. But yeah, we'll get more into the
Well, no,
Yeah.
shattering.
we'll go right.
Look,
Before we
for everybody listening, the best way to think about it is this way: there are space gods, and yes, multiple gods. We didn't talk about the one-eyed
yeah, there's
god of the
more. There's more.
giants. There's more we'll get into. Um, there are space gods fucking with everybody, and Marika needing an excuse to create MacGuffins for the player character. Go.
Yeah, that's not a bad way of looking at it. But okay, to just circle back, what we do know once again, I'll just to separate theory, the whole thing with America and Godwin maybe having giving birth to Mogan Morgot. That's a theory. It's not fact. It's not concrete. It's just a theory, not one that I subscribe to, but I wanted to bring it up because the three of us did talk about it for a little while. What we do know is Ronnie's plot with the Knight of the Black Knives,
Yeah.
stealing the rune of death, imbuing the knives, Godwin getting killed, or his Godwin's spirit dying, Ronnie's body dying, and both of them getting one half of the curse mark of death.
And I think it
That's
was
everything
also
concrete.
explicitly stated that Godwin is Marika's favorite in the game. I don't
Yeah, I
remember
think
where or
Yeah.
when, but I feel like that was
That's why
stated.
he's the golden. He's the pure, and it's interesting because I actually didn't know this until I was watching a lore video like yesterday. When it came with the war with the dragons, Godwin actually, rather than kill them, befriended the dragons, which is
yeah,
why him and his servants remaining can use lightning magic because only people with the blessing of the dragons in the lore can use like lightning magic
And
yeah,
draconic armor.
and draconic armor. Yeah,
yeah. That a lot of the dragon lore is going to be noticeably absent from these notes and probably from our
it's the same as
discussion.
Dark Souls. If you know the Dark Souls dragon lore, it's the same.
It's just
It literally is the exact same.
like anyone listening and hopefully still listening to this, massive amount of just shit that we're going to be spewing for the next 2 hours or so, there's no way in hell we can cover all this in a few hours. It's
Yeah,
just
because we
so
want to talk about
much.
gameplay and stuff too.
Yeah,
So
like if you listen to this show, we want to definitely talk about the game and the design of it and the gameplay of it and
Yeah,
everything.
we
So
didn't even get into the giants, the one-eyed god, all that.
yeah.
Some yeah,
So the dragon stuff is going to be noticeably absent. I overall feel that it's less important to fully understand this game anyway. It's just
yeah.
it's there
yeah.
if you want to learn more about Godwin, if you want to learn more about the dragons, go dig it up yourself. I apologize. We just cannot possibly cover everything in this game.
Yeah.
But anyway, moving on. Delilah alluded to it. Let's talk about it. Marika, who was already disillusioned with the greater will, lifts her hammer and shatters the Elden Ring.
Mhm.
Radigan does his best, tries to repair it, because he doesn't oppose the Golden Order, he doesn't oppose the Greater Will, but he ultimately fails to repair the Elden Ring, and as a result, the Greater Will takes both of them and imprisons them within the Erd Tree.
I just want to insert here, this is just going back to the cosmology aspect that I was discussing earlier with the order versus chaos.
Mm-hmm.
I do find this lore point interesting in how Marika and Radagon are the same, yet one is faithfully loyal to the greater will, which I view as order, whereas Marika goes and shatters it, which could be perceived as like chaos. Again, that dynamic of order and chaos.
I mean, Marika just has like the ultimate form of multiple personality disorder.
Oh my
When you really
god.
think about it, this is truly at its heart. This game is about mental health. So, um,
Right.
I'm like half kidding, but you know, now that I'm saying it out loud, it kind of makes sense.
No,
Anyway,
she is all over the place for real.
yeah.
But like I also like maybe get it. I mean, I don't get it. I'm not a god, but I like
Well, if you want to try to like find a theme in the game, that's why I keep bringing up the order versus chaos thing. Is like the ability of every individual to be chaotic and break from the system, but also the tendency of people to just blindly follow a system,
yeah.
Yeah.
which is what, and it's embodied in presumably the same person.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, is there anything we talked about, like, you know, potential reasons why Marika could have shattered the other? Really, I just think, you know, her favorite son was killed. You know, we talked about maybe it's because Ronnie did find a way to oppose the greater will, and she said fuck it.
Yeah.
You know, there's a bunch of reasons. We ultimately don't know the defining, definitive, absolute reason why she did it. Who knows if we ever will? We just know that that is ultimately what she did.
Because the player needs a MacGuffin. Go.
Right.
Yeah, well, you know.
We have to collect all the great runes.
Eh. Speaking of great runes, which are shards of the Elden Ring, they were all claimed by pretty much all of the spanning children: Reichard, Moog, Morgot, Melania, Michaela, Radon, Ronnie, and even Godric claimed one. Renala had actually already been given one prior to the shattering by Radigan as a gift. I
Another
believe
gift.
he gave it to her with this was when they parted, when he left her too.
Yes.
He gave her the one, the rune that lets you respec. I forget what it's called exactly, but it was given to her in an amber egg.
Yeah, it's called like the Rune of Rebirth or something like that.
Yeah, something along those lines. But yeah, all the kids came and grabbed a piece of that power for themselves.
Which,
Which,
oh, sorry, I just wanted to insert going back to the influences.
oh, go ahead.
Bears some similarity if you're familiar with the Tolkien Legendarium or you read the Silmarillion. There's one god technically in Tolkien's Legendarium, but he creates all these demigods, the Valor. If you've seen the movies, you've heard the elves reference, may the grace of the Valor. They're essentially a pantheon of demigods, each one knowing a piece of God's plan for the future, with the exception of one that knows all, but he's forbidden to tell the rest. But they each all inherit a certain aspect of power, similar to what you see in other mythological pantheons. And that kind of bears resemblance here, where each of the demigods has a rune
Yeah.
that is connected to one aspect of the rule of reality in the lands between.
And I'm not sure if this, I'm pretty sure this is a theory. Like they connect to different outer gods. Like Millennia's outer god is like the god of Ra. Modes
Right,
is,
yeah.
the
I think
formless mother.
some of them, I think definitely do, right? Well,
Yeah.
maybe
Well,
not definitely, but
Moog
like,
like worships the nameless mother, and that's why he
well,
kidnapped Michaela to.
I think that's, well, yeah, we'll get to that, but I think he just somehow made contact with the formless mother, but like the rune wasn't necessarily connected to it. But who knows? It could be. You know, that's definitely a good, definitely an interesting thought, an interesting theory that I could subscribe to. Um, but yeah, they also, any excuse to give Jason to talk about the Silmarillion, I'm here for it. You know,
Fucking awesome book.
it's your favorite book. I know it's your favorite book.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, all the kids grab a rune for themselves, and this kind of leads to a whole lot of war. Radon, he becomes like a general and wages war against all the demigods, trying to get their runes to become even more powerful. It's just him and Melania left, and she, in desperation, unleashes the Scarlet Rot within the Caelid battlegrounds. That's why when you go to Caelid, it's suddenly very red and very nasty
I
and
love
full of
it.
rot lakes.
It's my favorite region.
It's all
Yeah.
Melania's fault. She unleashed that Scarlet Rot on him and Caelid. Caelid was left a barren wasteland, and
Bitch just couldn't take the L, man. She had to. just fuck up the entire area.
She was undefeated. Like she had to maintain that fucking that fucking 100% win ratio, man.
Yeah.
But that Scarlet Rot also infected Radon and made him basically go insane. He was just a mindless beast.
Bloodthirsty.
Yeah.
And he ate his own horse. I wanted to cry.
Wait, I thought. Oh, that's true. Yeah. Well, it's actually interesting because he is like the master of like gravity magic, and apparently in the lore he uses gravity magic because he didn't want to leave. He didn't want to leave his first little tiny horse, so he uses gravity magic so that it can carry him around.
It's mad funny. This big
Um,
ass Ganondorf looking thing on a little tiny horse.
and I found it interesting that the side quest line that leads you to him, because he's like totally optional to fight. You don't have to fight him. But his whole side quest line involves going to his castle, and there's like a yearly competition, or I don't know if it's yearly, but there's a regular competition to fight him and hopefully put him out of his misery, so he can move on in peace.
Mm-hmm.
Which I thought was interesting, and it made for a really cool boss fight. You get to summon like all the
Everyone.
NPCs. Yeah, that was awesome. That was
I
so
love
cool.
how you could summon Patches and then he just leaves when he realizes it's you he's helping.
Yeah.
Oh,
He's
is
like,
that what happens?
Yeah, like I don't know if you noticed, but if you do his quest, which is
Mhm.
basically just not killing him when you
Yeah.
encounter him in one of the optional dungeons,
Yeah.
it says, "Oh, you've summoned Patches," and then immediately Patches has returned to his own world.
See, I always thought that
He just
it
got
was
murked.
he just got murdered like that quickly. I never realized it was because he realizes it goes uh-oh and then leaves. That's
And
hilarious.
for those listening who don't know, maybe aren't familiar with FromSoft, Patches is a recurring character throughout their games.
Yeah.
I think even in like Armored Core, right?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know about Armored Core. I know for certain he was in Demon Souls
Yeah.
and Dark Souls.
He's in
These are the only two I've played. So
he's basically always an asshole. That's all you need to know.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's it wouldn't be a FromSoft game if Patches didn't kick you down into a chasm of some sort.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like he was. I'm just fact checking here. It looks like he was indeed in Armored Core for Answer.
Wow.
Which is hilarious. Although it's not quite the same Patches that we know, but
Right.
there is still some semblance of him being present as early as that game.
Kind of like Sid from Final Fantasy. He's just always there, but not the same character. No, I don't mean characteristically. It's just a name.
Right. Yeah. Although pretty similar characteristically per every From Software game that he's been in since Demon Souls. Like I said, I wasn't kidding. It wouldn't be a game with Patches if he didn't kick you down some sort of chasm. Because he does that a lot. Anyway, so yeah, Radon loses his mind. Kaled left to rot. We'll circle back with Melania shortly. Morgot, he kind of just assumes rule of Lanedale. He just kind of grabs control of the city and becomes its protector, which is interesting considering because of his omen status, he's rejected by the Golden Order, by the Erd Tree, by the Greater Will. So it's interesting that he kind of just doesn't take the hint and is like, "Oh, I'll protect this city. It's mine now." And it's like, nope, nobody likes you, dude.
It's pretty clear he resents the fact that he's Omen.
Yeah.
And tries to fight against that, which is interesting again because his twin brother like fully embraces it.
Yeah. It's also interesting that he takes on the form of Morgot.
Yeah.
Right.
It's another moniker of his, and I didn't quite realize that. And it was also interesting on the approach to Lanedale how Morgot actually respawns and tries to stop you again.
Yeah, he stops you 3 times,
Yeah.
man. He's protecting that tree more than anybody. And y'all put him in the sewers. Shame on you.
Treat him like garbage.
Well, according to the lore, that's actually kind of a mercy that only royalty get, like royal born Omen. Most Omen
being thrown into the fucking catacombs to live.
Well, in the lore, most Omen in the lands between, when their children get their horns cut off, and that kills like the majority of them in the process.
Well, anyway, Morgot. That's kind of all there's not really much else to say about Morgot. Interestingly, I don't. At least I didn't come across anything more to add to
He's
him.
basically just super loyal to the Greater Will.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's more interesting is Moog, who makes contact with the outer god Formless Mother, becomes the Lord of Blood, and becomes really versed in blood magic, and kind of protects something that we'll talk about a little later. I think we'll circle back to that soon.
Yeah.
Mikola, the twin of Melania, he is both seeking a curse or a curse, seeking a curse. He's already cursed. He's seeking a cure to his and Melania's curses, and also abandons the Golden Order. He, also strongly opposes it. He's the one that creates the gold and unalloyed gold needles that actually suppress the Scarlet Rot. He also eventually makes a needle that gets rid of the Frenzied Flame, which again we'll circle back to later. But yeah, Mikola's just trying to fix his and Melania's like fucked up lives. He grows the Halig tree with his own blood, basically attempting to recreate the Erd tree, and attempts to embed with it. Goes into a slumber, and while he's sleeping, Melania comes back from her battle with Radahn, or is brought back in a coma, I should say. I think Finlay, one of her clean rot knights, is the one that saves her. He's actually obtainable as an ashen remain.
Mm-hmm.
He brings her back to the tree to wait until Mikola wakes back up. Unfortunately, Mo comes and kidnaps him
Mm-hmm.
while Melania is asleep and powerless to stop him. Moog comes, kidnaps him because he wants to kind of groom him. Another episode of Reap the Spoilers, we're talking about grooming. He kind of wants to grow him to be his own king consort, and puts him in this cocoon. But Mikola never wakes.
Yeah, basically to be like the equivalent of what Marika is to the Greater Will. He wanted Mikola to be the same to the Formless Mother, this
Yeah.
another outer god that we really don't know anything about other than Moog finds her and worships her, and it has to do
Yeah.
with blood magic. Yeah,
Yeah. So Mikola, we never really see anything other than Mikola's arm sticking out of that cocoon.
Mm-hmm.
right.
Pretty fucked up imagery, pretty gross.
Yeah.
It's also interesting to think that he's eternally a child, yet his arm was like massively
Really long,
overgrown.
yeah.
Yeah,
Which like I guess the cocoon was doing that to him, but pretty crazy that happened.
it's also interesting. There isn't much in there about Mikola in game, but apparently a lot has been data mined about him that was taken out of the game. That's like still on the disc and in the files.
I feel like there was still a good amount
Um,
about him, just like little lore bits, nothing like too like massive or giving big implications for the
yeah,
game. But
it's implied that like he had a natural ability like to
mm-hmm.
make everybody like him, and like you'll notice that a lot of downtrodden factions in the game worship the Halig tree and see it as
Yeah.
salvation. And
I also wonder. This is pure conjecture. I wonder if that's why Moog chose him to become the king consort.
Yeah,
maybe
that would
he
make
woke up.
sense because he was creating the tree. Because basically, when people die, their body and soul goes to the Erd tree, but the Erd tree rejects people who are like cursed, and
yeah,
he wanted to create a tree that accepted the bodies and souls of cursed beings like his sister and himself. And yeah, I'm sure Moog would vibe with that. Like, if they're being rejected and just like this, like spirits or whatever the hell, the lands between with no place to go, they're like in a limbo.
Yeah.
yeah. The only reason I mentioned the data mining stuff regarding Mikella is that it's speculated that purely based on that he might, and because the Halig tree, the end game content revolves a lot around him, it's speculated that he might become a bigger player in a potential DLC. But again,
Hey,
pure
maybe.
speculation.
Yeah, it's possible. The other thing I want to bring up surrounding all that is with Melania slumbering at the roots of the Halig tree, and her being, all scarlet rotty and stuff. It corrupts the tree and all the surrounding areas. I think it was built on top of a town, Urdale or something. I kind of forget the name. But it corrupts everything, and that's why the Halig tree fucking sucks, and I hate it. God, going through the Howling Tree, guys. That was like the point where I was like, I am so fucking ready to be done. These stupid
Yeah.
silverfish looking motherfuckers kept killing me.
Oh.
I was getting so pissed off.
At that point, I was just tired of walking on branches. Like I had done in the
Yeah.
deep root depths. Like I think another section I can't remember, but I was done with
Yeah.
trees at that point.
God. Moving on to Reichard, Prater Reichard. He also opposed the Greater Will. He eventually allowed himself to be eaten by the Elder Serpent of Mount Gelmir, which is a place he hung around a lot, and he kind of merged with it and became this very twisted serpent-like beast. He met a consort long before that happened, Lady Tanith, who kind of becomes the lead of the Volcano Manor, and I took this as like she coaxes and tricks people that go on these assassination attempts for the Volcano Manor. She kind of tricks them into going to face Reichard so he can be fed and
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what I gathered with that.
Yeah, Reichard. And I'll just interject my hot take here. Best boss in the game, best story in the game.
I don't know about best story, but I definitely liked the boss battle.
I'm just talking about the side quest associated with him in Volcano Manor.
Yeah, that was pretty. Well, are you referring to the assassination attempt or quest? Or are you referring to the side quest
Basically,
involving Raya?
all of it, like everything having to do with Volcano Dialos, everything having to do with
Oh, yeah,
Volcano Manor.
Dialos is part of that too, and Bernal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like of all the people who oppose the Golden Order, this was like the direct opposite that he could possibly be. Like he was like, if Golden Order is order, like Reichard and the Volcano Manor and everything was like chaos, like the direct opposite.
And I'm also a little biased here because his boss weapon is my weapon of choice, my favorite weapon in the game.
Oh, really?
That I
You used the serpent sword. Cool.
No. The blasphemous
blade.
Blasphemous.
Gotcha.
Well, is the serpent sword like even useful outside of that boss arena?
If you upgrade it, you can. I've seen people using it to like beat Fire Giant and whatnot.
Because the reason I ask is it has no stat requirements because they want anyone to be able to wield it. So
right.
But yeah, this is the obligatory gimmick boss.
The Storm King.
Yeah, exactly. Did we? Side note: this game didn't really have a puzzle boss.
You could argue Renala.
I guess, but like, all right. I guess you could call
because Renala is a gimmick fight as well for the most part.
Yeah, but it wasn't quite a puzzle boss in the same way like Dragon King and Demon Souls or Bed of Chaos was in Dark Souls. It wasn't quite the same way.
I understand.
There is no combat; it's all puzzle that you have to figure out.
We'll talk more about this when we get to design, but
yeah, that's fair.
Every boss fight in this game is essentially just an open arena.
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to bring it up while it was on my mind because I definitely wanted to bring it up because usually there is a puzzle. There's at least one puzzle boss and one gimmick boss in these games, and I didn't really feel that any of these bosses were puzzle bosses. And I mean strictly in the sense that there's no combat whatsoever.
Right. You just have to use the environment. There's something in the environment you have to figure out. I think that has more to do with, again, the fact that all the arenas are open.
Okay, we'll circle back to that though later. Moving on. Is there anything else you guys wanted to bring up with Reichard?
No.
Okay. This until we talk about Volcano Manor, I don't see his name coming back up much.
Yeah, Reichard is like one of the most straightforward parts about this game.
Yeah. So this is where we start getting into the events that actually happened in the game, right? The Marika, what Marika winds up doing, obviously pissed off. She's kind of stuck in the Erd Tree. She summons back the Tarnished, and this is kind of what we were talking about with Godfrey being banished and all the other Tarnished, was kind of to grow their strength in other lands so that they can then bring that strength back to the lands between. And this is the perfect opportunity, right? She's trapped. She says, fuck the Greater Will. All my homies hate the Greater Will. Go fuck it up for me because I can't do anything. I'm imprisoned. Please help me. So she brings the Tarnished back to the lands between to defeat the Greater Will. And a part of this is the blacksmith Hugh, who is part of the Roundtable Hold. She tasks him with creating a god-slaying weapon, which is that weapon that he's seemingly hammering upon the whole game, trying to create something that will defy the greater will.
Yeah, which
And somewhere along the line, Roundtable Hold is formed. Sorry, go ahead, Delilah.
yeah, no, I was just gonna say a quick side about Hugh and what's the girl that he trains?
Roderica.
Rodriguez.
Like they had the most hopeful ending of like all the side quests,
Yeah.
but yeah, their relationship was gorgeous.
We'll definitely circle back to that when we go over some of the side quests and stuff. Yeah, so eventually the player tarnished us, as it were. We are summoned back, and we are maidenless. We at the time we're summoned back, we've not yet touched grace. And who's the first? Vare is the first guy we kind of meet, right?
Make sure we know we're maidenless,
Yeah.
as he keeps reminding us.
Rubbed it in our faces.
Yeah.
Like, haha, you're maidenless,
And then he
loser.
has the balls to call his lambkin eventually. I wanted to smack him.
But yeah, we're approached at a site of grace eventually by Melina, who there's a lot of mystery surrounding.
Oh my god, yeah.
And she kind of offers to act as your finger maiden, which basically is just like a follower of the Golden Order that kind of lets someone turn runes into strength, which is, just the obligatory, here's how you can level up.
Level up waifu.
Yeah, level up waifu. And will occasionally spread the gospel of Marika. She'll speak Marika's forgotten words or whatever at certain locations that you go to. So yeah, she kind of guides the player on their way to become Elden Lord. At certain sites of grace, there will be a beam of light kind of guiding you along to major points of interest, including the main path.
And she gives you your horsey. Well,
yeah,
not really a horse, but ancestral spirit or whatever.
Yeah, and I kind of forgot about this too, is that Ronnie's actually the one that appears to you and gives you the summoning bell for you to summon Ashen Remains. I didn't remember that. For some reason, I guess I thought that was also Melina.
And at the time, her name is showed to the player as Rena, the Snow Witch, which ties back to Melina being able to give you Torrent as kind of a spirit summon as well, which ties back to, even though there are strong implications that Melina is tied to Marika, there's also the theory that a lot of people that I've seen subscribe to, that she is actually an accidental creation of Ronnie, because Ronnie assumes, as the naming that I just said implies, she actually assumes the form of Rena after she frees her spirit from her physical body. And Melina is essentially the inverse version. She has the same face, but she just has red hair instead of blue, and the eye markings are on the opposite side. So the theory goes that she is actually another copy of Rena, just without the memories. Although what the things she does along the way in the game, at times it seems she's serving Marika, at other times it seems it would make sense she's fulfilling Rena's wishes.
I think
to the extent we know them.
I think she's largely a follower of Marika. I mean, it's why.
Yeah, I don't know. This is just a theory that
a lot of people put forth. Yeah, I would still, until we know more, I would still say Melina is a follower of Marika. I mean, she's constantly bringing up her words. She gets really pissed off at you if you inherit the frenzied flame of the three fingers versus following the two fingers Golden Order. It seems that she's a very devout follower of the Golden Order. And I've seen so many theories about Melina. And the fact of the matter is, there's so many theories because we know nothing.
Yeah, because it's confusing that she gets mad about the Frenzied Flame, yet in the Frenzied Flame ending, we see what is presumably maybe Rena herself. Don't know. It's the character model looks exactly like Melina, just it's a little different.
She has like dark hair, and the other eye opens and it's blue, kind of like Ronnie's.
Yeah.
I don't know. I might have missed that. I know. There's if
Mark, you did miss it only because that's the ending if you do the Frenzied Flame before you...
I know.
Yeah,
and I didn't.
Okay.
I never circled back to watch what happens if you inherit the Frenzied Flame before the incident with Melina, which we'll talk about very, very soon. but I know that she in that of if you do that in that ending, like she does do a little extra bit of like chastising, or someone that very much looks like her does a little bit of extra
Yeah.
chastising.
That's why I say that's why I say it's a theory and it's
Yeah,
confused because at times it seems Melina is tied to Marika, but at other times I could see how she could be tied to Rena, who is trying to destroy Marika, who is at this point pretty much just an embodiment of the greater will.
Yeah.
personally, I would still subscribe to the idea that she's a devout follower of Marika.
Yeah, I mean, if the naming convention means anything, it does start with an M, which would indicate she could be some kind of something with Marika. But also, Melina is a spirit, kind of like Ronnie. She's not like a physical person because she, like, transports in and out as she leaves the sites of
Yeah,
grace. So she could just be someone that's taking on the form of someone else, kind of like Ronnie is. We just don't know who that person is.
yeah. So moving on along this path to becoming Elden Lord, one of the major side quests that you can do involves Godwyn. And since we didn't talk much about Godwyn, short of his initial introduction, I do want to touch on this. Um, with his soulless body, he's only like really half dead. His spirit is gone, but his body remains alive. Um, this leads to a faction called Those Who Live in Death being formed. um I kind of didn't dig too much into the lore of this, but I know Fia is obviously involved, and once she's eventually given Ronnie's half of the curse mark of death, which you can obtain during her side quest, she's able to form the mending rune of the Death Prince, which you can use for a specific ending.
Hmm.
Is there anything you guys wanted to talk about with this side quest specifically with Fia?
No, I just I don't know. Like it was a little confusing to me because she like I don't know why she wanted to bring back Godwyn because I think that was her purpose was to
I think she
bring
what
Godwyn
she
back
I,
from like
I,
also
th-
but
I
what
think they
she
just
wanted to
wanted to bring
do.
back was death, like permanent death to the world.
She wanted to give him a more complete death, and like and kind of rebirth him as the Death Prince, because
hmm,
he's only half dead, right? Like she wanted to give him the full curse mark so he could be fully dead and be reborn as this,
right.
a reborn anew. So she creates the mending rune of the Death Prince, and I think that's kind of a way for when if you use that rune in the end, it might be a way to maybe rebirth him within you as the new Elden Lord.
Hmm.
That's a way to look at it.
Yeah,
Don't take that as gospel. Don't
she,
take that
she
as fact.
look, she's edgy and is all about death.
She holds
And I
you.
think I think she just has emotional problems. That's why she wants a hug.
Yeah, she wants a whole lot of loving. Um, and back to Jason's point about the dragons, like this is where you face off against. Is this the fight against Placidusax?
No, that's
No,
Fortisax, I
Fortis-
think.
Florida. Okay, I get those two mixed up.
Yeah.
So you fight, and that's like what that was like one of the dragons that Godwyn had like befriended,
Hmm.
and kind of opposed you when you kind of enter the dream state, because he was like all fucked up or something. Like I said, dragon lore wasn't something I looked into much, not quite my forte.
Yeah, we
So
haven't. Speaking of dream states, we haven't even talked about the fucking alien comets that come down and if Ronnie's quest line, the what is that? Something Stella, which is like a fucking
Noxtella, the Eternal City.
no, the
Oh,
boss that you fight at the end of Ronnie's quest line. Um, that there's a copy of
oh
in the
yeah,
snowfield.
Oh,
It's
Estelle?
Estelle, yes, the fucking bloodborne alien boss.
Yeah.
oh yeah. Um, fuck that thing, man.
Yeah, for melee classes it's a nightmare.
Yeah, Estelle, natural born of the void. That's what it's called.
Yeah,
That thing was rough for sure. Um, yeah, we'll circle back to Ronnie's quest line
later, yeah,
shortly for sure. When we talk about her ending, I think it's a perfect time to talk about it. Um, so anyway, moving along, the kind of one of the last big story moments is before the very end. You need to you get to Lanedale, you fight Morgot, you get up to the Erd tree, and you find that that the branches and the thorns are preventing you from entering. And you talk to Melina, and she's like, oh, I guess we got to burn that shit. So you guys venture to the mountaintops of the giants to obtain the Flame of Ruin to then ignite the Erd Tree. And this is where things get a little different, depending on if you go and get the Frenzied Flame or not prior. So if you don't get the Frenzied Flame, and Melina, you get the Flame of Ruin, Melina will sacrifice herself to ignite the Erd Tree. And if you do get the Frenzied Flame, which is down this really, really
Oh
long
my
elevator
god.
shaft
It's a
after the
nightmare to
Moog
get
boss
there.
fight, yeah, I died on that so many fucking times.
Yeah, that
And
probably took up most of my deaths.
here's the thing. This is one brief gameplay thing that I'll bring up about these games, all of these games, even though this game had the most intuitive control scheme by the fact of just giving you a jump button. When these games try to be platformers, I fucking hate them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dark Souls did this a couple times, and it pissed me off to no end. This game, holy shit, getting down there to get the Frenzy Flame fucking sucked.
Yeah, I guess they really didn't want people to just do that because you could end the game right then and there early. So they try to make it hard, but even still, it was annoying for
I mean,
those who.
I
you
also I
still
also
have to
find
get
it.
all the way to the end of the game in order to end the game. You know, getting down there and getting the Frenzied Flame. I mean, you can't end it earlier than the normal end, can you?
I think you can open
Yeah.
the door as soon as you get there, which
Really?
happens, yeah, pretty early on.
Yeah. If you explore Lendel, yeah.
Oh,
But I
interesting. Okay.
didn't do that because it ruins the other endings. So I don't know if
Yeah.
like after that you still have to fight the like Radagon
I
again.
would assume you still have to. I haven't seen anything that says you can skip everything. That's why I'm a little surprised of the prospect of
You
skipping
can't
stuff.
skip the mountaintop of the giants, but
Okay.
you can get to the sewers earlier um than it like burning and whatnot. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I got down to the sewers before I even fought Morgot. I beat Moog before
Yeah.
fighting Morgot, and
Which I
you can't get down there until after Morgot's dead, like
yeah.
past down to the Frenzy Flame because the path is blocked. But once Morgot's dead, you're free to go get the Frenzy
Hmm.
Flame anytime.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But the Frenzied Flame, it's actually tied to another outer god, and is followed by the 3 fingers rather than the 2 fingers, which the whole finger thing is.
How many fingers like do we have 10?
Well, again, it goes back to the frenzied flame. Goes back to the cosmology I keep bringing up in the duality, where it
Yeah.
makes sense that it's 3 fingers, given that the 2 fingers is for the golden order and the 3 fingers is for the frenzied flame. The frenzied flame being an embodiment of chaos, because essentially its goal is to have all living life coagulate into one thing through destruction.
Spoilers, it's the end of Evangelion.
Yeah, well, that's what happens towards the ends of the Elric saga is that the chaos gods who have been manipulating people absorb all of them into like one fucking giant monster, and Elric has
Yeah,
to. But anyway, um,
just
again, it
because
goes
there's
back to
human instrumentality.
that cosmology of order versus chaos. I find interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, getting the Frenzied Flame, which, it's interesting how you have to. It's tied to an interesting side quest, that we'll talk about shortly. I want to get through the main stuff
We're
that we
almost
have to
done,
do.
guys. Hang
Yeah,
in there.
we're almost done. We're almost done, and then
We're
we'll get to
making
the
we're
side
making better
quests.
we're making better time than I thought. We're at
Yeah,
Yeah,
hour.
no,
yeah,
this is going smooth.
yeah. So yeah, with that, so yeah, Melina either sacrifices herself, or if you have the Frenzied Flame, she gets really pissed off and abandons you and says, hey, if you reach the throne and become Elden Lord, I will do everything in my power to try and kill you. Like, she really does not want you to inherit the Frenzied Flame.
Yeah.
And then past that, this is where things get a little weird for me. You just get, like, all of a sudden you're in crumbling Farum Azula. Like, why? How do you get there? What's the purpose of going there all of a sudden? Like, how, like, it just didn't really click with me. And then you go through that area and you fight Malekith at the end, in order to obtain the Rune of Death from him. And then you're just suddenly back in Lanedell after it's covered in ash from the Erd Tree. that whole sequence of going there and then coming back just all of a sudden because reasons just didn't really make sense to me. I don't know if you guys have heard any theories or
The
have read
only
any potential
theory I
reasons.
heard is that Crumbling Fair Missoula was like the first place before the lands between or something, where like the first gods were formed and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a place locked in time, but presumably I've heard multiple theories of who exactly teleports you, whether it's Marika, whether it's Melina, whether it's Ronnie. But again, if it was Ronnie, it would be dependent on if you're even doing that quest line.
Like
Basically, the ultimate reason is because Malekith is there with destined death that you have
I
to get with him from him.
I wonder, I'm gonna do a live theory right here right
Yay, let's
now,
go.
because this question keeps being brought up by you, Jason, of what betrayal is Malekith referring to. I wonder if the betrayal he's referring to is Marika sends you there to kill him,
Could
and
be.
so therefore he feels betrayed because Marika sent someone to kill him now.
Yeah.
All she wants is someone to oppose the greater will and free her. So what if that's the reason? What if that's the betrayal he's referring to?
Could be.
To me, that kind of makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Again, a theory. I have no concrete evidence. It's just conjecture.
right.
But if I do say so myself, it makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, I like that.
I mean, it
All
could
we
be
know is
anybody.
that
It could be anybody. Like when before you fight Morgot, there's all those chairs numbered for all the demigods, and Morgot says "traitors all,"
Yeah.
um, implying that everybody is kind of broken away from the greater will in
Yeah, and I think
some shape
there
or form.
there were 6 chairs, and I think they belonged to what was Moog, Mikola, Melania, Ronnie, Radon, and Reichard.
Hmm.
I think
mm,
those were who they all belonged to. The children, as it were.
yeah, the
Uh, Go ahead, Delilah.
no, I was just gonna say the interesting part about Crumbling Fair Missoula. The only thing we know is that it predates the Erd Tree, and like so there's like dragons in there, beastmen, banished knights, and godskins. But the interesting part about it is the same exact architecture is where Garank is chilling in Caelid.
Oh,
It has like that really like you could actually traverse down just the way you traverse in Crumbling Fair Missoula. You could go all the way down to get like some secret items. And it's the same architecture. And I think there's also a piece of architecture similar where Dragon Barrow is. It's like at the very edge of Dragon Barrow. There's like one little structure that looks like it. But yeah, anyway, that's it.
that
That's
that
all
kind
I
of
got.
that kind of makes sense, given that Garank and Malekith are ultimately the same person. So, where Malekith is hiding out, it kind of makes sense that where Garank is, there's some connection there.
Yeah, and it does make Caelid more fascinating because it's like, well, why at Caelid, right? And what did Caelid look like before the Scarlet Rot? It's just very, very
Yeah,
fascinating.
probably a whole lot less red.
Yes.
um so yeah, after you beat Malekith and get the Rune of Death, you're just teleported back to Lanedell. It's covered in ash, and it's pretty straightforward from there. um you can this is where you can ultimately finish Corhin and Goldmask's quest line and get the Mending Room of Perfect Order, I believe. Which Goldmask, we could just talk briefly about Goldmask quest line. He's like just basically searching for answers about the Golden Order, and ultimately comes to a lot of conclusions that he's very dissatisfied with about them, and kind of wants to create a better Golden Order. That's kind of how if I'm recalling correctly, how I
I
uh,
think
interpreted it.
that's one of the other moments where besides the statue situation where it says America is Radagon, I think
Yeah,
Goldmask also comes to that conclusion because he basically just stares at the Erd Tree the whole time and
yeah,
does nothing else. And Corinth is like observing him through his hand movements, and like something changed with his movement where he stopped moving after he realized I think Marika was Radagon, and that's when he started to like not be down with the Golden Order and wanted it to go back to what he thought it was or something like that. So
yeah,
these are like devout greater will people, like to the core, and once they realized that everything they were devoted to wasn't what they thought it was, they like forget about it. That's why
yeah,
you can give Corinth the tonic of forgetfulness that you can either give to him or Raya or even Nefeli. If you choose to give it to Corinth, then he lives on forgetting that everything he devoted his life to was actually bullshit.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, and if you don't give it to him, by the end, I think he like goes a little crazy.
Yeah, he does.
I remember talking to him, yeah. But
and dies.
I don't know.
I feel like that's the end to like most side quests.
Yeah, most of them are like you talk to them, they sound a little off, and then you reload the area, and their body's either dead or gone, and there's just an item there.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's their bell bearing and their gear. It's like, oh, okay. Did they strip naked and go streaking? Okay.
It's kind of it's a From Software. These are two From Software tropes that are heavily permeate this game, to the point where it almost might as well be Dark Souls 4. Is that the two tropes are quests that involve tragic endings for the characters, the side characters, that is, and a not necessarily corrupt is not the right word, a misleading religion or system hierarchy or something that the corrupted church trope, if you will.
Yeah. Okay, let's just roll down the hill right into the endings here. You climbing up the Erdtree. You fight off against Gideon, which I thought was interesting. That Gideon opposes you. He's the all-knowing. He's basically the Odin of this game, of this world.
And he got all his knowledge from you. And he's just gonna betray you like that? Like, come on, bro.
Well, he's like, because he's like, oh, we're all trying to become Elden Lord, so let's work together. And then by the end, he's like, okay, we're here. We can no longer work together. I need to kill you.
Well, the interesting part is that the reasoning he gives you is that he now knows. He says he found out what Marika's plan was and did not want it to come to fruition. Also, interesting to note, Gideon. Are you guys familiar with the story of Gideon from the Bible?
No.
Oh, never mind. He was basically he was
slack at least.
He was like a leader, and he was like a leader of the Hebrews in Israel, and basically he was considered like cowardly. It's weird. There are different interpretations, but essentially, it's all like tests of God, his faith in God. Like he had to lead an army of 20,000, but God told him only to take those who drank from a river in a specific way, and he ended up only having 300. But then, like, God did something that caused the enemy army to break into chaos and kill each other. All these weird tests of faith. The only reason I bring that up is because at the end of Gideon's arc, his faith is tested, and it's implied that he no longer jives with the will of the greater will.
Mm-hmm. Tune in next month for our Reap the Spoils episode on the Bible.
I've never even read the Bible, man. I just know because I'm into mythology and shit.
In college, I had to read Exodus, and that was enough for me.
Oh boy, damn.
Go ahead. You wanted to say something, Delilah?
Nah, just Exodus straight there, huh? Damn. Couldn't even start you with Psalms. My goodness.
Isn't Exodus the beginning? We read the beginning, like the first book of the Bible.
Yeah, Exodus is part of the Old Testament. Yes.
Okay.
So it's like the Jewish Bible and then the expanded Christian Bible with the New Testament.
I don't want this to become Bible.
Yeah, no, we're good. Let's go.
Sorry, I'm pretty sure it was Exodus, but I could be mistaken. But anyway, back to Elden Ring. You fight Gideon, and the final boss fight you do before entering the Erdtree is against Godfrey for a moment, until he reverts back to his primal form of Hoaraloo. You fight against Hoaraloo at the end, which has some interesting implications with the side quest line involving Nefeli.
You can actually summon her to fight with you.
In that boss fight, can you?
Yeah, if you do her quest line.
Oh, I didn't know that. See, like, there were a lot of times where I'm pretty sure I missed the fact that I could summon, because eventually I just stopped paying attention to the summon signs on the ground.
And also that mimicked here.
Yeah,
Yeah, but like still, I like I would have preferred to summon like an actual NPC because I feel like it has better story implications. The fact that I could summon somebody like
Yeah,
it
like with
makes more sense to
Millicent,
me.
like Millicent
Yeah.
has a bunch of fights in her quest line. Yeah,
Yeah, and like the fact that you could summon Ruggier against I want to say Godric in at the beginning in Stormvale
Yes.
Castle.
yes,
Like certain NPCs you could summon into certain fights, and it just like made story sense, plot sense to me.
yeah,
So I always preferred to do that, but eventually, since there's always so many notes on the ground, I just start ignoring them and not realizing, hey, some of them are different colors. You should pay attention to that.
right,
Yeah.
So yeah, if I must have missed that, but Nefeli Liu being the adoptive daughter to Gideon implies, like they're not related, so she has a different lineage of some sort, and having someone else have the same last name of her, and with the conclusion of her quest line being that Kenneth Haight kind of identifies her as the true heir and proper person to sit on the throne at Stormvale Castle, really implies that yeah, she's maybe not the daughter of, but definitely part of the lineage of Godfrey.
Yeah, man.
But the fact that she's a Lou under Horaloo,
He was getting it on before America. What?
or after, maybe it was after he got banished, and went back to wherever he came from.
Mm,
Who knows? I just thought it was really interesting to connect those dots
yeah.
and recognize who she's probably in all likelihood related to, given what we know.
Yeah.
So I thought it was cool, and I really wanted to talk about that. That's all we really have to talk about with
Hmm.
Nefeli's quest line. But I thought
hmm
that conclusion was awesome,
Yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
super interesting. Um, so yeah, after beating Godfrey and Horaloo, you can enter the Erd Tree and you fight Radigan, and that was pretty fucked up. That
Yeah.
fight. And
Well,
then after that, you fight an even more fucked up thing.
yeah.
What's up, Jay? You seemed like you wanted to say something.
Oh no, you just when you bring up the Elden Beast, it's just
Like
never again. I will never play
to
that
have
fight
to
again.
have to have to fight Radigan was one thing. To have to fight Radigan and then have to fight the Elden Beast
Well,
right after without
Radigan was one of the
breaks.
best fights in the game.
Radigan was a cool fight, but it was tough. It was challenging. It made me use a
Yeah,
lot of my healing flasks and to then
I
have to go into another fight that's really fucking tough, even tougher and a little
and
unfair.
that seems specifically designed for you to use torrent in. That somehow
mm.
I would not be surprised if somebody at the dev office in From Software just forgot to turn the switch on to let you use. I'm not kidding, and it goes back to my central thesis regarding this entire game. But we'll get into that later when we talk about design and stuff.
Okay. But yeah, like fighting against the Elden Beast, I take it we all had a pretty bad time with that one.
I finished, I think, this fight in like, I don't know, 10 tries or something like that, but I did have to change my entire loadout, and
Yeah.
not my I didn't respec. I still used I still had the spec, the stats for the items that I used,
Yeah.
but pretty much, yeah, I had to equip a different like art of war. I had to equip a different shield, a different weapon. Like, it was crazy.
See,
Mm,
for me, the fight wasn't hard. I did it in 2 tries. Because mostly because I had an overpowered build, and again, we'll get to that when we get
yeah.
to gameplay and design. But it's just annoying. It's an
Yeah.
annoying fight.
For me, it was very frustrating because there were just lots of things. It might have come down to my build. It might have come down to me not having like the most protective armor and things that could allow me to take more than 2 hits.
Well, yeah, because the thing is, like, we can get into it later more, but most of the bosses are weak to bleed, which is why they nerfed bleed recently,
Yeah.
in the latest patch. But Radagon and the Elden Beasts were immune to it, actually. And they inflicted holy damage, which is something that we didn't have to deal with too much throughout the game. So it
Hmm.
was just kind of like having to switch it up kind of annoyed me, because I got really like loyal to my Bloodhound's Fang and stuff like that. But eventually playing around, which was kind of cool, like a interesting lore piece of Elden Beast's weakness is that he was weak to Black Flame. If you use Black
Oh,
Flame against him, his damage goes down really quickly. And that's how I was able to beat him. So I wonder if that's like, like the Black Flame that we were talking about before, if that's like the direct sort of weakness to the Golden Order, and that's why like the Rune of Death and all that was like needed to be there or whatever.
that that makes sense. I could definitely vibe with that theory or that idea. I mean, if it explicitly does make it weaker, then yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think ultimately that's why I did I stopped using Mimic Tier and started using Black Knife Tish a lot towards the end, and that I think that's what I used to beat Elden Beast was Black Knife Tish.
Nice.
Because it lowers their max health by a good chunk, but also uh if stricken with that black flame depletes their health continuously for a little while, kind of like a fast acting poison,
Yeah, that makes
um,
sense.
which
Yeah.
was really nice. So yeah, I could definitely agree with that. But yeah, Elden Beast was tough, and that's like basically the greater will incarnate. The form made physical of the Elden Ring fighting back against us.
Yes.
All right, let's talk about the endings. I guess let's start with the worst ending, which is if you have the frenzied flame and you're locked into that and that alone.
Mm,
Um, with the frenzied flame, you kind of just destroy the world. You kind of just destroy the lands between.
everything's an eternal flame.
Yeah, basically.
I don't know if I would call it the worst ending.
Well, it's the worst ending in this. I don't know. I would call it the worst ending.
I guess from if you're living in the lands between, it kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But your life already pretty much sucks. You can't die. You're
Well,
destined to just walk around and
yeah, I guess the question is, how do you answer the question of, but
yeah.
can it get any worse? Would you count being lit on fire and purged in eternal flame a worse outcome for just living in the lands between?
And some people have again, just a theory. Some people theorize that this is the frenzy flame ending is what sparks in Dark Souls lore what is known as the Age of Fire, from which humans draw power to defeat the dragons and whatnot.
Yeah, but I call it the worst just because it's like the darkest, most bleakest outcome.
Right.
Second only to one of the mending rune ones that we'll talk about, but I guess is there anything else we want to say about the frenzied flame
I
ending?
guess all I want to say is that it in this ending, like curse ones are no longer rejected or divided, so like it's kind of good for them in a way. But
Mm,
and it
yeah, I guess
like
that's fair.
directly defies the Golden Order. Because like if you listen to Maiden Hayata, I think her name was, um,
Yeah,
she like kind of explains why she was kind of pushing you to go for that ending. But I also think, and this is not something that's directly reported, it's just a theory that this is what Reichard wanted.
Yeah, and Hayata also bears a lot of resemblance to like the fire priests, the fire. I forget what they're called in Dark Souls, but they have like the bandages around their eyes
The
because they
Fire
see
Keepers.
the fire keepers. Yeah, like they
mm,
see through the flame.
Mm-hmm.
That's why people started making the connection with Dark Souls with that ending.
yeah, and I
Mm-hmm.
guess we could talk real quick about Hayata and her quest line. Is that she's blind and initially wants you to feed her shabriri grapes, which you come to find are human eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Initially she's disgusted, but thinks that eventually comes to think like, no, this is the will of the three fingers. Like, I'm gonna keep at this, and it ultimately leads you to she she ultimately leads you to the frenzied flame,
Yeah,
and you can inherit it
and
and
like
become the lord.
she's
Go ahead.
eating like shabriri grapes, and you do encounter shabriri at a certain point.
Hmm.
There's not really much to go on, but he did like put himself in the body of the samurai that you helped, Juno, I think his name was.
Um, Yuma? No,
Y-
not Yuma. Oh, I forget. Hold on.
I forgot his name too. I mean,
Yeah.
he was a chill samurai dude, you know. Kind of warned you to not fight that first dragon in in Limgrave, but he, yeah, after like that samurai dies, he like puts himself in that body. So I wonder if he like made the same realization that Ronnie did with the whole like curse mark thing. But there's nothing to go on except the fact that you see him in this samurai's body
It was
as Shibriri.
bloody finger hunter Yura.
Yura, there you go.
Yura was his name. But yeah, finding Shibriri in his body later, that was in the Mountaintops of the Giants, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
When you come across him. Okay. Yeah, I actually forgot to go back to him after I did inherit the Frenzied Flame to get that ending. I meant to circle back because he'll give you something, I think, if you
Yeah,
talk
I
to him
just
after that.
killed him because I was like, yo, nah, this is my homie's body. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm curious how things would play out if you kept him alive.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But yeah, that's kind of all there is to say about Hayata's quest line. It's at least that I can remember or find meaningful. And also of note is that you can undo the Frenzied Flame by using Miquella's needle that you can get after beating Melina and taking the unalloyed gold needle that you get from Millicent, right?
Yes.
You take that, or no, that becomes Miquella's needle,
Yes.
right? No, I'm sorry. You take
You
the
get several.
unalloyed.
You get several needles in
You
Millicent's
get
quest line.
you
Yes.
get the unalloyed gold needle from Millicent. You take that to after beating Millennia to the flower, and that turns into Miquella's needle, and then
Yes.
you can use that in place of Dusax's arena, to undo the frenzy flame. Which I'm not sure what was the connection to that arena that allowed you to do that. Was there something that?
I think it just has something to do with the fact that technically Placidusax was the first Elden Lord. It wasn't actually Godfrey, but this
Okay,
was before, presumably, Marika was even like the god. I don't really know because it's
okay,
like, again, it's the dragon
Well,
lore
yeah,
stuff. It's like
but it
locked in
predated
time.
the Erd Tree, so that would make
Yeah.
sense. It was before America.
okay. Yeah, I was just curious if there was a explicit lore reason for that, but anyway, it can be undone by doing that quest line and going there, beating that boss, and then using it there. So I thought that was of note.
Hmm.
Um, let's move on to the Elden Lord endings because there's four of them to talk about. Starting with the most basic, which is and my kind of my issue with these endings is that they're all very much the same. It's just the lighting and the tone of the voice and the age of blank is different.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
and like the sky and the tree look different.
yeah, there
It
just isn't
it's
a whole
assumed
lot.
it's assumed that you've been paying attention or investigating the lore to know what is being said actually means.
Yeah,
Hmm.
but like I don't know. I kind of would have hoped for a little more differentiation between the four of them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
like the
agree.
most basic one is just you become Elden Lord, you become you help Marika, and you're now her new consort, and it's the Age of Fracture, which I guess is referencing just the fact that you defied the greater will, that the Elden Ring is fractured but kind of brought
Yeah,
back together, and now it's the Age of Fracture. I don't know how else to really interpret it.
Hmm.
Then there's the Age of the Duskbourne, which is when you use the Mending Rune of the Death Prince, like we mentioned, you get from Fia and from Fia's side quest, ultimately, and that's the Age of the Duskbourne. Like I said, I'm taking that as Godwyn kind of being resurrected within you.
right.
Yeah.
Um, that's kind of how I'm interpreting that. Um, then there's the Age of Order, which is from the using the Mending Rune of Perfect Order that you get from Gold Mask. Um, Kind of, I guess, using that rune to establish his version of the Golden Order, his interpretation of how it should work. After he starts to question what's
Hmm.
actually there and what he had followed for so long.
Hmm.
And Delilah, I think this was one of your favorites, the uh, Blessing of Despair.
Yeah, the Omen ending.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just you
Which,
you get that from completing Dung Eater's quest.
yeah, which God, Dung Eater's quest was. Yeah, to get all the seedbed
Mm.
curses, and just he was a fucking freaky character.
Yeah, for sure. The only thing I didn't like about Dung Eater is when he like attacked my dude that was selling the boiled prawn.
Yeah.
I really liked that guy. Like his dialogue was great. He was like, "You must be hungrier than America's tits." I was like, "Wow, you're great."
Yeah, he
But um yeah, go ahead.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
I was just going to say the reason why I like this ending is because it just gave me hope for it's kind of like not exactly what Mikola wanted, but sort of because it gives everyone's inflicted with curse, so there's no discrimination of who could go to the Erd tree and who can't, and like who's going in the sewers and who's not, because at that point everyone has horns or whatever the hell, and so it's kind of like I don't know for like Moog and even I guess Mikola and Millennia to an extent, they're like they don't feel like rejected anymore, and I don't know, it's kind of cool in my
It's kind of
opinion.
like
They're also dead.
it's
Right at that point, right?
so it's kind of like Syndrome in The Incredibles. If everyone's super, no one is. If everyone's
Yes,
cursed, no one is here.
exactly.
And you get the reviled curse, that the mending room of the fell curse from oh god, Dung Eater bestows upon. Yeah, that's okay. I could see where you're going with that, and why you could view it as hopeful,
Yeah.
even though it's presented very, very dark.
Mm-hmm.
um but they do call it they don't call it the age of despair, they call it the blessing of despair. So i i
Mm.
i, I
Yeah.
I see what you're going for there.
And sorry if it feels like I'm beating a dead horse. I view a lot of these endings again in the light of that dichotomy between chaos and order. Like I view the Dung Eaters ending as like the chaotic good ending versus Frenzy Flame, which is like chaotic evil.
Yeah, that's fine. I
Whereas
can agree with that.
whereas like the Age of Order is uh, good order
Chaotic
versus
good.
chaotic
Oh,
good, or no, not chaotic good, like
Lawful
order
good.
lawful good. Yeah,
Neutral good.
lawful. Thank you. The D&D alignments. Yeah,
Yeah.
is like lawful good versus uh, the
Lawful.
fracture, which is
chaotic good.
lawful law. I would say lawful evil,
Hmm.
because you're essentially just continuing the will of the greater will,
Yeah.
and the greater
um
will is essentially just doing what imposing this order in order to take energy from everybody.
Yeah.
well, go ahead, Delilah. Did you want to say something?
No.
Oh, okay. Do we want to talk about what's probably our favorite ending, the best ending?
Which I think is kind of not canon ending, but is the best ending specifically because it's neither chaos nor order. It's balance.
Yes.
And that's after the completion of Ronnie's quest line. You are able to usher in the age of the stars and kind of reject the greater, or basically banish the greater will itself from the lands between, and then leave the lands between on a 1,000-year voyage, with Ronnie as her consort.
Yeah.
Is that a good way of putting that?
Yeah, and basically, yeah, Ronnie says everybody now is free
Yeah.
to kind of choose their own path.
Yeah.
But and it should be noted that it's kind of implied but never explicitly stated that like the moon is perhaps in and of itself another outer god.
Yeah, I could see it's kind of treated that way, um,
Yeah.
by some of the characters, including especially Ronnie.
Also, if you could kind of see both moons at a certain point, like the dark moon and the full moon, next to the Erd tree at like at night, if you know you're looking in the sky like I did, like so it would make sense that it was an outer god.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And there's a lot over the course of the game that we didn't really get into of like it's implied that there were attacks coming from outer space via stars, comets crashing um, into the lands between and burying like these alien life forms that you can encounter in
I
the world underneath.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think one of those is the reason you're able to continue Ronnie's quest line after you beat Radon.
Hmm.
Something falls from the sky and creates a crater down in Limgrave.
So lore wise, Radon, like I said before, was like the master of gravity magic.
Yeah.
So he was literally using that magic to hold the stars from continuing to rain down. Yeah.
Okay. And then him being gone allows one to come down and open a
Hmm.
path for you. That makes sense. I mean, is there anything else you guys want to talk about with Ronnie and her quest line leading to this ending? I mean, we haven't really talked about Ronnie's quest line. I feel like it was just a whole lot of MacGuffin chasing in a way.
It was
Yeah.
playing a guide because I mean, there had to be one person who somehow figured it out without a guide. Some like really dedicated, crazy person that somehow did it. But I feel like for the majority of people, Ronnie's quest line is playing a guide.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I kind of agree that this would be the canon ending, just because I'd love to see selfishly an another game of using the everything that was used in Elden Ring. I don't know if you can call it Elden Ring if the Elden Ring and Ronnie's ending is kind of like done with, right?
Yeah,
Because
Yeah.
we'll talk about the future for sure by the end, but
yeah, but it's just like of all the characters, the only one that seems like a direct mirror to Mariko is Ronnie, because like she's an Empyrean, she has a shadow. We're now her consort, like Godfrey was, and like her motivations could be questioned and disputed, but I would just love to see like the lands between with just like the moon and the stars. I mean, some of the underground sections like Nokron and Soifra, Noxtella were gorgeous. Like just seeing all the stars and stuff like that. So I would like to see like the lands between under that kind of light. So I do think it would make sense that this is canon. It's just the most powerful ending in my
yeah,
opinion.
I agree with that. I think it is the most powerful. I would argue just maybe the most hopeful in that it, when we talk about the Frenzied Flame kind of leveling the playing field between everybody, like now everyone's cursed, so no one is. This is just like, who fucking cares? You're all free.
Yeah,
Like the greater will is gone, cast out from this land. Like you can leave this land. You're not bound to it anymore. Like go do what you want. We're leaving.
yeah,
And I really like that. And it was, yeah, easily my favorite ending. Also visually speaking,
Hmm.
yeah.
just what a gorgeous spectacle to end on.
And you
Mm-hmm.
get married. You get married
Yeah,
to a
no
princess.
longer maidenless.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Fuck you, Vare. You can no longer call me that shit. Anything else you want to touch on with the endings?
No.
Not really. I mean, I've been talking about this cosmological, moral, philosophizing stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and that's really just me putting my own uh, biases on it based on what I know about Miyazaki and George R. R. Martin and their influences.
Yeah.
It just makes sense to me. At the end of the day, with the endings, it really is what you interpret and make of it. There isn't as clear of a thematic push or story
Yeah,
really
because
as
yeah,
other from software games, as vague as they may be.
I mean, I feel like with From Software games, at least in my experience, none of them ever try to like wrap things up nicely. They just try to end and show you a potential conclusion, and
Yeah,
then you go through it again and reach a different potential conclusion, or you save scum to see the other potential conclusions. But like, they don't try to wrap things up like a lot of games or stories would try to wrap things up and like finish up loose ends. These games are just like, this is a way it could end, and that's kind
yeah,
of it. And they're usually very abrupt. I mean, all these endings are a cutscene that lasts less than 4 minutes, and that's
Yeah.
it. And
yeah.
you don't.
They've always been kind of vague, and but the thing I would hammer on is that they always had all of them had a very clear theme. Although when it comes to storylines, Demon Souls and obviously Sekiro were nowhere near as vague as people seem to remember them being. They're pretty explicit in their storytelling. You get very direct exposition from NPCs in those games.
Yeah,
Um, but Dark Souls in particular was carried primarily by its theme of resisting hopelessness, finding purpose, overcoming challenges, and it was really almost like a meta commentary on the gaming in and of itself.
yeah,
That was the more important thing rather than the plot, which the plot was enough to understand. It was pretty straightforward. Gwyn was holding on to something that needed to be as we were saying in chat before.
Spoilers for Dark Souls.
Yeah, but Gwyn was holding on to something that needed to be let died.
Yeah.
But the plot wasn't important. It was the theme. Here, there really isn't much of a discernible theme, which is why I keep trying to impose one on it, because it's just my interpretation.
Yeah, and I
And
think that's why like Elden Ring has the most YouTube success, because not only do you have like the success of like the need for guides, and like the satisfaction of watching people fight a boss over and over again, but you also have these like thousands of lore and theory videos.
Plus,
um
plus the idea or the mentality that this is the most accessible of the From Software games,
yeah,
which I don't know whether I necessarily agree with that, but it's a purveying opinion about this title as it relates to the rest of their repertoire.
yeah,
So
definitely.
um we've got a bunch of side quest lines. We've already talked about a whole bunch of them, but we can quickly go over some more of them. We already talked really about Corehead and Gold Mask. We don't have to go much into that. We've talked about Ronnie, but we didn't talk much about Blythe, EG, or Celavis. I don't know if you guys want to say anything about them. I think the most in,
I mean, really, it's like I was talking about the From Software tropes. Blood is just he's shit. What's his name from Dark Souls?
I don't remember.
The knight you meet at the beginning. Anyway, it's the From Software trope
Oh,
of
Solaire?
Solaire, yes.
Really?
A hopeful
Oh.
character, duty bound, that meets a tragic ending, fate.
I guess you could look at him that way. And like the whole thing with Blythe is that is I talked originally about the inherent flaw with shadows is that if their master ever betrays the Golden Order, they're doomed to go insane and oppose them. And that's what happens with
Yeah.
Blythe is it becomes
Yes.
obvious what Ronnie's doing, and Blythe's his contingency that's put in place by the two fingers activates, and he goes crazy.
Yeah.
And in the conclusion of that side quest line, it's interesting to find that Blythe was attempted to be murdered by Black Knife assassins, and EG, when you go talk to him after the fact, if you leave and come back, he is murdered by Black Knife assassins,
Yeah.
Yes.
presumably because he removes his warding mask.
Mm.
Which it's interesting to think about. The Black Knife assassins were given their knives by Ronnie, and
Mm.
seemingly they come back and oppose Ronnie, which maybe it's because
They're like the Golden Order was kind of, or the Greater Will was kind of making them like not go on Ronnie's path. So
right, potentially maybe they kind of indoctrinated them,
yeah.
or like maybe it was a case of uh, they knew Blythe was activated to attack Ronnie, so maybe they thought EG was as well. So maybe
Yeah.
they were protecting Ronnie in the end and didn't realize that EG was, an innocent bystander.
Right.
Hmm.
Exactly.
Um, I think that those are possibilities. Again, speculation, not fact, nothing concrete. It's just pure speculation on my part.
Yeah.
Um,
Um.
and Celiavis was pretty interesting because he wanted you to kill Ronnie, and you had the option to give the potion to someone else. Oh, I don't know about you guys. I gave it to Gideon, who
Yeah.
disposed
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah, I
He
didn't.
had this like chamber of dolls of
Yeah,
in down there, and he was trying to do that to, I think, Nefeli
I think it was Selen. What? Don't you
and
find?
Selen.
And Nepheli and Selin, yeah.
Oh, Nefeli too. Okay.
And funny thing is, I only noticed this my second playthrough because From Software added it later. Is that the the character that was created by a actual player called what was it, like fight, he fought
Oh,
Millennium 101.
let me solo
Let
her.
Me Solo Her, yeah, was actually created as a doll
Right.
in
They
his,
immortalized him.
yeah, down there. I thought that was really cool.
That is really cool.
But Celivis is probably like one of the creepiest characters in this
Yeah,
game.
yeah,
He
for
like
sure.
made me uncomfortable. But if Ronnie's best girl, can I just say Blythe is best boy? But anyway,
Yeah,
we'll leave it at that.
absolutely. No questions asked. 100%. Um Selin, I thought was a pretty surprising and tragic storyline. Where
Right.
she was a member of the Academy of Raya Lucaria, and she was kind of cast out.
She was a heretic. Like
Yeah,
she wanted to explore magic that was forbidden by the Academy.
yeah,
Yeah.
and ultimately, when you finally let her reach that point, she becomes deformed and fucked up because she goes kind of too far with her advanced learning. That's at least
Yeah.
that's how I kind of look at it.
Did you guys all choose to help Selin? Because you could choose to help the guy that ran the
Oh
festival at
yeah,
Radon's
Yeah.
castle.
yeah.
Yeah.
I helped Selin.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, they just didn't give us enough for us to care about him.
The
Uh,
rewards are also better for helping Selin. Yeah, it's and
yeah,
unless you really like the choice, I don't see why you wouldn't choose to help Selin, given you spent more time with her,
yeah.
unless you
Yeah.
actually understand the lore behind what's going on.
Hmm.
Which again, you got to read through a shit ton of item descriptions, and you all know how I feel about having to read through. Yeah,
We'll
Yeah.
talk about that.
I
Oh,
will
don't
just
you worry.
say, did you guys notice that like Selin is like actually hot? Like you could see
yeah.
her, you could see her picture in the Academy of Raya Lucaria without her mask on,
Yeah.
and she has like black hair, and she
Well,
looks good.
all of
I never
the
actually saw what she actually looks like.
all the Liarnian sorceresses are hot. Like even Renala's hot, even with her little weird hat thing on.
Yeah. Renala kind of looks like Bayonetta, but like
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, I could see that.
before she's like a dominatrix.
yeah,
Um
Let's just add to the lore. Renala is Bayonetta in the
I mean,
past.
hey, they're both witches.
There
Why
you
not?
go.
Let's fucking do it.
She
Okay,
was
so
like, "Oh, you gonna cheat on me, Radagon? I got something for that ass." Okay, let's stop. I'm done.
that's the story of Selin.
yes,
she flies too close to the sun and ultimately gets burned. Um we talked about Fia for the most part. We didn't talk much about Rajir or more importantly D, which I thought was interesting learning about D, how he has a twin brother, but as one's awake the other can't function.
Yeah.
And I found his twin, and we come to find out that D's actual name is Darian.
Hmm.
And you only find that out after Fia kills him.
hmm
And
Yeah.
you go to his brother and give him, I think you give him uh D's gear set, and then he goes and acts revenge on Fia for
Hmm.
killing his brother. I thought that was a pretty interesting quest line, albeit pretty short and not a whole lot to it. You just have to wait until you reach the steps that you can advance it.
Right.
But I thought it was pretty cool. Rajir wasn't much. He didn't last particularly long,
Mm-mm.
but
yeah. You
it
just find him in Stormvale if you do some platforming, and then
you come to find out that I forget why he lost the ability to use his legs. He went down at the bottom of Stormvale, and there was I think it was meant to be um a remaining part of Godwin that was corrupted and
Uh-huh.
removed the use of his I might be misremembering, so if you want to learn more about that, please, I implore you to go look it up and read more. If I'm recalling correctly, it has something to do with Godwin and the remains of his body and
Hmm.
Rajir down at the bottom of Stormvale Castle, because you have like
Interesting.
part of his like mini quest line is you have to go down and find his blood stain.
Yeah.
So um moving right along, we let's talk about our favorite NPCs, the jar people. Talk
Yes.
about Uncle Alexander and I guess nephew Jarbairn.
Yeah.
yeah,
How'd you guys enjoy this quest line? I kind of found it to be a little underwhelming.
yeah. I mean, and that's after it was in the original release of the game. This quest was not complete.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah,
Okay.
we'll get again. I'm going to reference my thesis for the entirety of this game that
Okay.
literally links to every portion, gameplay, story, what have you.
Okay.
And this is just more evidence of that. But they added like all of this stuff with Jartown was added in a patch after the fact.
Okay.
Um,
Interesting.
Hmm.
yeah,
I
but originally it was just your encounters with Alexander, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
I wouldn't doubt what you're saying, Jason, because they added in more patches content like months after the game was out, and it
Yeah,
wasn't really anything substantial, but you just see him leave the Castle Soul, I think it was, um, and and you see him back in the same catacomb that he was in when you first encountered him,
yeah.
Yeah.
and it kind of like repeats. I don't know, it's weird.
Alexander's a funny character. Honestly, the only part I really found substantial out of his storyline wasn't even to do with any of the jar people. It was Dialos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked. It was like the first time, not the first time, but like one of the only times in a From Software character arc where like even though he dies in the end, which is pretty much what almost always happens, it
Yeah.
was like a good death, and
Yeah, he
it
does it
like redeemed the
defending.
character.
Yeah, he does it defending the jars from. I don't even remember what he defends them from.
There are people who come hunting for the jars or something like that.
Yeah, he defends them, and it's also interesting that I realized one of the invading phantoms that you can fight at one point is actually his brother.
Hmm.
Or it might not be an invading phantom. It might have been one of the assassination quests you had with Volcano Manor.
Oh,
Was to kill
okay.
his brother. I can't remember if it was one or the other, but it was definitely like a red phantom that you have to fight. Is
Hmm.
Dialos' brother, which is pretty cool.
Oh.
Um, but yeah,
Yeah, that's why like when we'll talk about in the Volcano Manor, at one point he kind of snaps in the Volcano Manor questline.
yeah, that's what leads him to Jarburg. Is
Well,
he leaves there?
I think his Dialos' sister dies, and he just like wants revenge, and on his quest for revenge, like realizes that it's not worth it, and then goes and like chills with the jar people and
Well,
helps them.
there's
From
a
from
specific
despair.
there's a specific line of dialogue that you have to keep going back to the Volcano Manor every time you reach like a new location or you do another assassination. So when you first get to Volcano Manor, Dialos is all like hyped up, like, "Yeah, I'm gonna be a fucking heretic and kill people."
Yeah.
And then at one point you go there and he's like breaking down, and he specifically mentions his brother. So I think it's implied that the death of his brother triggers that.
Yeah.
Maybe it might be.
I
I
mean,
can't remember the order of events with that.
I mean,
yeah.
neither do I'm just trying to sort out everything
Yeah, yeah.
because there's so much like dialogue that you could even miss just by not coming back at the right time, and then it skips over it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I liked Alexander. He gave me a lot of Onion Bro vibes from Dark Souls. Just
Mhm.
Siegmeyer.
yes,
Yeah.
Sigurd of Katarina, I think. And yeah, he just like had like he was just like always down to fight, like because I think the lore behind the jars is that they're just the souls of like fallen warriors or something just put into a jar, and that's why they're always just kind of like on a quest to like battle.
I actually
Pretty
didn't know
much,
that.
yeah,
That's
pretty
interesting.
much. That's
Yeah.
why at the end, when you finally defeat Alexander and Crumbling Pharaoh Missoula, you get the piece of him and bring it back to his nephew to
Yeah.
go, so he can start going on his own quest. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And like he was great. Alexander was grateful for it too. Like with you doing that, it was that was also a pretty positive quest line
Yeah,
yeah,
by the end.
definitely one of the few.
And Jar Baron wasn't like sad or anything. He was just like, "Oh, cool. Okay, I guess it's time for me to earn my keep."
right.
Yes.
So, pretty interesting stuff.
I hate though
Um,
that you can go to Jarburg and just murk all of them.
oh
Yeah,
god, who would do that though?
I didn't, but
The jars are so cute. Well,
yeah, they are.
the ones that aren't hostile towards you are so
Right.
cute.
Even the ones that are, I'm like, damn, why? Come on,
Meh.
I know Alex. Come on, guys.
We've talked a bit about Volcano Manor. The only substantial thing that we haven't touched on is Raya and her
Yeah,
relationship with Tanith.
hmm
her story is fucked up.
Yeah, was definitely surprised to find her to be a snake girl.
yeah. So
Yeah,
a bit of lore. I don't know if we touched on it in the breakdown, but basically, Reichard allowed himself to be eaten by this
Yeah, I
snake.
did mention that.
Okay, okay. I didn't remember if it was in there. So basically, he's like a snake. So he is with Tanith. They have a child that's Rhea, and
No, I thought Raya wasn't actually Tanith's child.
no, I thought she was. That's why she's a snake.
yeah, I thought she was.
Uh,
I thought Tanith took her in as like a mother figure,
Maybe
but
I'm remembering it
she
wrong.
is the child of Rykard.
Yeah, I know she's Reichard's child. That's why she's a snake.
I mean,
Which
that part
means
makes
she's
sense.
Empyrean.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I
Well, we don't. We don't. I mean, we know. We think we know what Empyrean
yeah,
is, but who knows?
I just like to poke at it because it's kind of confusing.
And of note, her real name is Zarias,
Yes.
Zarias, right.
as we should definitely bring up. No, it looks like Tanith is definitely her adoptive mother, and
Okay.
she's the only one that knows her true form.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I'm just
and
live checking here. Born by the grace of a great king. That very well could be Reichard. Um, and there's not a whole lot more to go off of.
yeah. Well, once Raya, I think, finds out that she's his daughter, she like wants to kill herself or something because she's like doesn't feel like people accept her form,
Well, what she,
and Tanith wants you to give the tonic of forgetfulness to her so that
yeah,
she
Mhm.
doesn't feel like that.
yeah. Um, I'm not sure ultimately what her fate is if you don't give that to her. I don't know if she kills herself or if she just leaves.
So you have a choice to either kill her and then you just get her items, or she it looks like she leaves and she leaves a letter for you that
Yeah,
says
that's
she
right.
left, and she gives you the items anyway that you would get if you killed her.
Yeah.
I think there's speculation that Reichard winds up killing her
Eating her.
anyway,
Yeah,
but
I heard that she's eaten by Reichard, like as a sacrifice.
I think you can meet her after fighting Reichard, though, like and finish her quest after that.
well, yeah, you could, but because he's technically immortal, maybe he still has
I
a
thought. I
way of.
thought. I thought Volcano Manor empties out after you beat Reichard, no matter which way you do it.
Well, she's not in Volcano Manor by the end anyway. She's like in Mount Gelmir in like the town underneath.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, you find her down there. Um
Okay, so then technically I didn't complete her quest. That's probably why I'm a little hazy. Okay.
okay. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting one.
Yeah.
Just I want to, move right along. We have like two, maybe three more that I definitely want to talk about. I know you want to talk about Bach.
Yeah. What did you
The
guys do?
I used the prattling plate to say that he was beautiful
Yeah.
and he accepted who he was.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't want to like. I don't know. I felt like giving him a larval tear to allow him to change who he was just like giving in to all of his self-consciousness about who he was, and it was better to give him self-acceptance as a motivating point.
Yeah, so my first playthrough, I didn't like use a guide. Like I said, I explored and then guide for cleanup, but
Yeah.
sometimes you're just a little too late. And for Bach, I
Yeah.
was because I was giving him the larval tears. My second playthrough, I definitely listened to Melina's dialogue, and she was like, "Oh, if you give him the prattling pate, he thinks it's his mom telling him he's beautiful, and then he's just gonna live," which is the more hopeful outcome. But it's really dark what happens to him if you give him the larval tear. He winds up in the Academy of Raya Lucaria, looking like imperfect children that you fight when you fight
Oh.
Renala, and he's just there like hunched over but looks like them, so he looks like really creepy.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, and then when you come back, he dies because that literally like cuts people's lifespan.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so the better outcome is to use the prattling
Man, that's
plate.
so sad.
It's so sad. That's why I wanted to talk about him because it
Holy
was
shit.
so dark.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
Wow, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
Again, man, Miyazaki reads way too much Berserk. Not
Yes.
not that that's a bad thing because Berserk is fucking amazing. If you haven't read it, go read it. But he lays it on really thick with his influences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um damn. All right. We haven't talked really at all about Millicent, who is kind of revealed to be one of Melania's children, one of her daughters.
Was it her daughter, or is it just like she's like? I thought it.
No,
Maybe I just missed from the dialogue,
I
but
think it's her one of her daughters, like explicitly one of her
yeah,
daughters.
I remember her. She's definitely related. I didn't know it was her daughter. Okay.
And she's, also cursed with the scarlet rot,
Yeah.
and ultimately you can get her a prosthetic arm just like Melania has, and it kind of leads down to the Halleck tree, where you can either help her against her sisters or help her sisters against her.
Which
Right.
again, why would you help her sisters?
Yeah, exactly. Why? So obviously I helped her, killed her sisters, and gave her her happy ending, I guess.
Yeah, she didn't want the needle in her anymore. She wanted to just she accepted being a child of Ra and
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Which
died.
I don't know if we mentioned, but Rot is also technically outer god.
yes.
Who?
Yeah.
Oh,
Rot
Rot. Yeah,
itself, yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
This is true.
The interesting part, I didn't do this, but I saw this in one of the lore videos from the people that I mentioned earlier. That if you do choose to side with her sisters and you kill her, her body becomes a flower,
Yeah.
just like
Just like
Melania,
Melania.
which is an interesting implication for the Halleck tree and what's going to happen to that with the two giant flowers there.
Yeah. Yeah, and then there's Gowry, who was like not. I don't think it's ever explained if he's her adoptive father or her biological father. I don't. I can't imagine Gowry being her biological father. I think he's the adoptive father.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
he's another creep.
he's just from that sorcerer town in Kaled, and I think
Yeah.
he just like has knowledge of her and so looks after her. I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I definitely do wonder who Melania, who's the baby daddy. You know,
Right.
who had Millicent and all the
Well,
sisters with her.
as far as the rules of this world are concerned, Melania could have just had a baby with herself.
Well, okay, no, because it's not. While I will liken Marika and Radigan having kids together as asexual reproduction, they are definitive two halves of the same coin, where
Look,
Melania
man,
doesn't really have that.
look. It's like Jurassic Park. Life finds a way. Okay.
Yeah, well, that's fine. That's a perfectly acceptable thing. I'm okay with it. Like, if that's what I just wonder if like that's gonna be a lore bomb at some point
Right.
that Melania had kids with, fucking someone. I don't know. Could have been Patches for all I know. Which Patches, his side quest line isn't even worth talking about. He's just a dick to you through the whole game.
Wait a minute. Okay, so did all of this now I'm curious, did all of the daughters have M? I know there was Maureen, there was Millicent.
I don't know if did they have names? I just thought they were Millicent's
I
older
remember
sister
seeing
or
names
younger
because I was like,
sister.
Maureen, stop it, because
I don't
that fight
know.
was kind of
You
annoying.
know, I think a good way to look at it, they clearly wanted to create like a mythological pantheon. And in that sense, I can kind of cut them some slack with the lore and the storytelling. Because in the same way that like a lot of this stuff doesn't make total sense, but it's not really that important that it doesn't make sense. It's like what is it? Loki is like the father of Fenrir or whatever or something. He has
Right.
something to do. I don't know if he created
Loki
in Norse mythology.
Yeah, Loki had Fenrir, Hel, and Midgardsormr
Right,
all
like
with
look,
Angerboda.
yeah, like Loki gives birth to a fucking like wolf monster. Like
Well,
you know what I'm saying? Like
there's also the fact that Loki becomes a horse, copulates with another horse, a
yes,
male horse, while Loki is the female horse, and gives birth to Sleipnir, the eight-legged horse that's given to Odin.
Oh
but
my god.
you get my
Which is
point, right?
Yeah.
You get my point. So
I know. That's why I'm kind of like, you know what? Yeah, who fucking cares? I'm not like looking for that answer. I'm just curious if they'll ever explain that, because it is curious that we kind of know both parents of every kid here, except for all of Melania's children.
Right. So
We
their
don't
names
know.
are, by the way.
well, possible DLC could it be Mikola? More incest.
I
Oh
doubt
god,
it. But
no.
go ahead. Go ahead,
That's like
Delana.
incest and also pedophilia. Mary, Maureen, Amy, and
Hey man, it's
Pollyanna.
not outside of
Yeah.
GRRM's wheelhouse, okay?
Yeah, we know, but like, oh god, please no. There has to be some boundaries, okay? Um, but okay, so they did have names. I guess I missed that. But I thought that fight was like pretty easy. I like I don't know. Before I knew it, they were all dead.
Yeah.
Well, my problem was keeping Millicent alive.
Oh,
Mm.
okay. Well,
Yeah.
that's a different issue, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of her quest line. And the last thing I just wanna end on is Roderica and Hugh. We kind of brought that up, but like their ending was like Hugh was kind of asked to like look after Roderica.
You're so cute.
And yeah, it was kind of like an interesting father-daughter relationship. Um, and she desperately wanted him to leave at the end when the Roundtable Hold was, on its last legs, and he refused because he still, I guess, had a duty, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, because he's like bound to make weapons to kill gods or whatever.
Yeah, he's bound to make that god slaying weapon. So yeah, they were an interesting and good um not even really a side quest, but like just good wholesome characters that were part of the Roundtable Hold.
Yeah, he ultimately, if I remember correctly, forgets everything, right? Like his
um
memory is wiped of you at one point.
I don't know about that. I can't remember.
It might be after you beat the game. I can't remember because
Well, I don't know. I've gone. After I beat the game, I haven't gone back to talk to anybody because I just kind of ended in the Roundtable Hold. So I don't know. Maybe. But yeah, there's other people in the Roundtable Hold we could talk about. I just don't think there's any need to
nah,
or
there's
purpose
yeah,
to.
they're kind of just there NPCs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we're finally done talking about the story and the quests. Unless there's anything else you guys want to talk about.
All I wanna add, and I think everybody can kind of agree on this, is that the quest, the way the quests are given to you, and the way the steps proceed, and this goes back to what I was talking about earlier with playing the guide rather than playing the game.
Yeah.
The way these quests were presented in Dark Souls worked because it wasn't an open world, so the designers knew where you would be going, and everybody kind of came across these NPCs naturally. It doesn't work for this kind of game
Well,
design.
okay. So hold on, because this is getting in design stuff. So are we
Yeah.
done with lore and story?
I
All I
guess
was going to say was that if you're going to have an
I
open
I
world,
I want to
yeah.
circle, Jason. I want to circle back to that. So I want to make sure we're
Okay.
done with lore and story before
But
we.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
Delilah.
Yeah.
I guess the only thing, we don't have to talk about it, but just kind of like my burning questions that remain and will remain until there's either more like comic books or extended lore or even a sequel is like what does it really mean to be Empyrean? Because like if Mikola and Melania are cursed, like how are they Empyrean and fit to be a god when the greater will like rejects those who are cursed? So it's, and is it like, what does it mean? That's a question that's never gonna
Well,
leave my mind because there's a lot of
It means you're
contradictions.
important to the story.
Right.
Well, hold on, because we talk, Jason, you talk about how this game doesn't have an underlying theme, but what if the underlying theme of this game is hypocrisy? What if the idea of like, the idea of Empyreans, it doesn't really make any sense. They kind of just like choose, like Marika is just obligatorily or arbitrarily chosen as the beholder of the Elden Ring. Why does she deserve it? She's
Yeah.
not, she's just a Newman woman. And why are some of their kids Empyrean, some of them not? What are the rules here? And I wonder if the theme is just the hypocrisy of this golden order. What if that's what's purveying through the
Well,
veins of this entire game?
again, that's kind of a given. It goes back to what I was talking about before, the
Sure, but
two
like,
FromSoft tropes.
I think that's a really important
Yeah,
thing to consider when talking about this entire game. We talk about how there's the rule sets are really really limited, and they're really kind of unknown, and they kind of contradict each other a lot. And that it's not contradictory even in just theorizing, it's contradictory in what's actually concretely presented to us. So what if that's it? What if
Yeah.
it's just like, hey, you're given, I mean, we've seen other video games toy with this. I think Final Fantasy X is a great example of talking about how hypocritical religion can be.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a fascinating example. And what if this is an example of that? What if that's
Right.
ultimately what this game is trying to convey?
yeah. I mean, sure, and that jives perfectly well with what I don't want to say it again, but the dichotomy of chaos and order, and
Yeah.
neither necessarily being good or bad. They both
Yeah.
contain good or bad. Yeah.
But I think that's a perfect way to look at the overlying themes of this game. And I would definitely like to know what it means to be Empyrean too, but I think ultimately we're never gonna know, and I think that's the point.
Yeah, and that's why I brought up the way that this is constructed, kind of like a mythology, like Norse
Yeah.
mythology, where it doesn't necessarily make sense and it doesn't necessarily need to, and maybe that was the intent.
Yeah, and if
Right.
it's inspired by like Shadow of the Colossus, it would make sense because people are still talking about that game.
Yeah.
We have an
Hey,
episode on that.
hey, we talked about that game last year. Go check it out. Reap
Yeah.
the spoils on all your favorite podcast feeds.
Yeah, and just one quick theory that I want to share very quick.
Okay,
We don't
go
need
ahead,
to
go ahead,
even
go ahead,
talk
go
about
ahead.
it, but I wonder if like either Ronnie or whoever is going to try and orchestrate things so that they have Mikola's like spirit put into Godwin's body, since Godwin's spirit's dead. That would be like an interesting way to like expand on what the hell happened with them. But anyway, I don't think that'll happen, but it's just
I
a question
my
that I have,
the, the counterpoint to that is, why the fuck would Ronnie care about Mikola at all? You know?
Yeah, that's true, but then again, everyone does, right? So
Oh, that's yeah, you bring up a good point. He's got that power to compel people to care about him.
yeah,
So
like I literally use like a bewitching branch, which I think is kind of like the similar power that Mikola
Yeah,
has.
it was what was originally given to him by Radagon as a gift. Like Mikela did something for Radagon and gave him a gift, and Radagon gives him in return that branch that gives him the power to make people care. Yeah.
Yeah, and basically how it works in the game is you can use it on like like the spirits in Castle Soul, and I had the two spirits that Commander Neil summons fight against him, and I really didn't need to do anything that whole fight because they just pretty much murked him.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's like if Mikola has that power, like
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Are we good to
I'm
move
done.
on
I'm
to
done. Yeah.
okay?
No more
Yes.
theories.
Yes.
Because we gotta get on to the gameplay and design stuff that I know
Yeah.
we want to talk about. Okay, circling back to what Jason's saying, I completely agree. Okay, here's the thing: is when long before I even played this game, I was listening to or I was perusing Twitter. This game was so talked about, it was hard to avoid. And the thing that Jason Schreier of Bloomberg, the thing that he tweeted out about and suggested for anyone going into Elden Ring was to keep a journal, a physical journal, and write notes down to keep track of stuff. And in theory, in my head, I was like, wow, that sounds like a really fucking cool way to play a video game. To go on this adventure and to keep the log yourself. I love that idea. In practice, who's gonna fucking do that? I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to do it. And that's why I ultimately followed a guide, because I didn't want to miss anything. And if I did, if I want, I am very much, I want to play this game, I want to beat it, I want to move on. If I want to go back in the future and play it again, that's fine. Maybe I'll do that. I probably will one day, decades later, go back to this game and play it again. But like, I want to play it, I want to get the platinum, I want to get the most out of it in one go, and I want to move on from it. And having to keep track of all these things myself would have just been a nightmare to try and do,
Especially on a first playthrough.
Yeah, and also not knowing when certain like no way back points, no points of no return. There's certain, like Delilah, you mentioned you just went in blind, and like you would realize things after it was already too late
Yeah.
to talk to advance someone's side quest, or no, like with Bach, you didn't realize what you could do until you couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't want to take those risks, especially when it might have resulted in me not getting the platinum trophy in one playthrough, because it took me 115 hours to play through this game doing everything. Like, if I hadn't done everything, it might have taken me, it took you 70 hours, Jason?
70-something hours, yeah.
I didn't have another playthrough in me after this game. I wanted to be done with it by the time I got to the Halictree.
It's also worth pointing out, even that journal idea, which I've heard before, would not work, because there are quest steps in this game that the dialogue it might give you a hint. Sometimes it doesn't even give you a hint of where the next step is for a specific quest.
Yeah, well,
sometimes the hints don't help at all. Like, for example, in Selen's quest, there's a step where they say you need to go to a cave near a town in Caelid, which is that the sorcerer town that's like abandoned.
Yeah.
But in order to actually get to the cave, it's hidden behind an invisible wall in a cliff by a church, like way away from the town. So I was like just wandering around that town until eventually I looked at the guide, and it's like, here is an invisible wall at this specific point, like 5-10 minute climb up this way by a church. It's like, only crazy people who are running around rolling into everything hoping there's an invisible wall would have found that.
Well, and that's these games are so contingent on the community aspect anyway. I mean, you see it in the game and you see it outside the game. In the game, there's messages all over the floor that you can read, and it's people finding things and then letting everyone else know in the game, like, oh,
Yeah.
try jumping, or try finger butthole. But things more helpful than that
Yes,
usually. But
yes,
like, there's lots of helpful messages left behind. It's very community driven. It's one of the biggest things that these games are known for, but it's not talked about as often as it should be. And it once again goes outside the game too. There's wikis, there's subreddits, there's videos, there's all sorts of discussions around theories, but also just like, hey, check out this cool thing I found, and now everyone knows about it. They can go check it out themselves and find a really useful item.
Yeah.
That being said, this game is so big, and there is so much shit in this game, and so many dungeons, and so many like I have it listed in the notes here as bloat. There's just so much stuff in this game, and if you don't have something telling you, like, you could go to Dragon Barrow Caelid completely optionally, and you might go there and like look around and find some dungeons, and it might kick your ass for hours, and you finally get to the end and you get an item that doesn't fit with your build at all, and you had no way of knowing that. You just wasted how much time, and you got something that you're never going to use. And that's kind of like why I have an issue with how big this game is and how much stuff there is and kind of how it's designed. And that goes with everything, with having to keep a quest log to make any sense of direction on where to go with some of these quests. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm rambling about a
No,
lot
no,
of my
no. I mean,
you're
frustration
I
not.
could. I
around
don't.
how this game is designed.
You're not. I agree with you, and actually, I would add, it's telling that my favorite parts of this games are the legacy dungeons
Mm,
that are designed just like Dark Souls.
right.
Hmm. What by legacy dungeons do you mean, like
Like
Stormvale Castle?
Stormvale.
And
Yeah.
Stormvale, Lendale, Volcano
I
Manor,
mean, they're easily the
the
best.
Academy,
They're easily the best areas of the game, and that's
because
not to
they're tailor
disparage.
designed.
And that's not to disparage the smaller dungeons, because I really like that aspect. It's part of why I like what little I played of Breath of the Wild, and clearly where this game it takes influence from Breath of the Wild, besides its open world, are those micro dungeons. The smaller dungeons you can clear in maybe 30 minutes. There's like a boss at the end of each one, but they're all pretty easy.
And they're all
And
usually copy pasted assets of
yeah,
bosses you
and
fought before.
that's kind of what I didn't like about the dungeons, where a lot of them started to just be very samey, and a lot of the bosses started to be very samey. They're like, when your goal is to have the most bosses you've ever had in a game, but like most of them are just copies of one
Yeah, so
another.
just to give a quick number count, there are I think it's
165.
165. Yeah. Of those 165 bosses, there are 9 unique bosses in this game. There were
Yeah.
25 or 26 bosses in Dark Souls 1.
9 unique, that seems really low.
9
I would
unique that are not copied at all.
oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. Okay. Um so there's more than 9 unique, but there's 9 that don't have any copies
So
of
like
anything.
Moog, you actually fight a copy of Moog in many instances before you actually face Moog.
Yeah.
That much I do know.
There is a copy of Godric. There is a copy of
Market.
Estelle,
Market.
of Margit. You could consider a copy of Morgot, although it's slightly changed. But
Yeah. But okay, I see what you're saying now, and that makes sense. That's fair. Um but yeah, man, like, there's just so much, and you could waste so much time getting a thing that just like might not be useful to you in the slightest, and you have no way of knowing unless you're consulting a guide, unless you're researching on wikis. And I know that I've been in this long enough where I know that's a large part of the community surrounding these games, is to do lots of research on your build so that you don't waste levels and stuff towards them. But like, for a game this big, it's fucking exhausting.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you guys at all, but why I actually like this structure, and I won't say I like it more or less, I just like it as a change to the Souls
And
formula rather,
yeah.
because like Yes, they did reuse things, and I do think that they tried their best to not make it feel like the same exact boss by like adding two of them or like giving different weapons like a scythe or a sword or just a different type of weapon to like make the fight a little bit different, or like just changing the arena, like when you have to fight a black knife in like a claustrophobic dungeon versus like a big field, it's a lot different.
Or how about you fought this variant boss and you fought this variant boss, now fight them both at the
At
same
the same time, yeah,
time.
like when I had to fight the fucking Crucible Knights in one of those heroes' graves, which were the worst. Like they were like
That
Sen's
sucked.
Fortress, but like yeah. So like I
Mimic
guess
tier, baby.
yeah, that's the thing. Like I didn't
That only helps
use.
so much against that fight.
Well, if you upgrade the mimic tier and equip yourself with healing spells, and
Yeah,
you have
I
and you
know.
have the right build, your mimic tier is literally invincible, even after the nerf.
Yeah, so I fought the Crucible just as like real quick. I fought the Crucible Knights without my Mimic tier leveled up initially, and then I realized that you can very easily like they're kind of a joke once you equip a small shield and you could just like parry the shit out of them really easily.
Yeah,
But
Yeah.
you have to equip a small shield, so you don't not a medium shield, not a big one. But anyway, yeah. I guess the point I'm trying to make is I feel like they did try to keep it refreshing while reusing assets, and they do kind of explain it in the lore with like where bodies go and spirits go after you die. But I get it. Like it does feel like exhausting fighting like the same types of bosses, and by the time you get to Altus, it's like the dungeons feel the same. It's the same music, more or less the same environments. They try and switch it up by adding different gimmicks to the dungeons, but they don't do it enough for it to feel that refreshing. So I get it. Why I did like this structure though, is that I liked running into the Tree Sentinel in Limgrave and that being one of the first enemies you encounter, and you cannot fight that guy yet, or like you get teleported to Caelid and you realize that all of those enemies are way above your level. Like I didn't mind dying like that because that's what made the exploration fun, and knowing kind of like it was like my health bar was like my compass kind of thing, and I thought that was an interesting way of like giving me an idea of where to go without telling me with like a marker or
I
something like
guess I
that.
guess the best way I can express my feelings on the open world and the way that content it was filled with content. Um, while the aesthetics, the visuals of the open world are certainly impressive, more impressive than probably any game I've played. Um, Around the end of Liurnia, I stopped completely doing the random non-essential dungeons unless there was a specific item I knew from online that I needed from a certain dungeon, which I don't
Yeah.
think occurred after that point.
Yeah, it's I'm so conflicted because on one hand, Delilah, I totally get your point, and I totally agree that like the feeling of exploring and like stumbling upon something or getting caught in some sort of trap that takes you to a faraway place that you're not prepared for, like fumbling through that kind of stuff and discovering it all on your own, like it's part of why I love Outer Wilds so much, a game that could not be more different from this game other than the fact that it's all about exploration. Like that's a game where you just explore, you go to other planets and you learn, and this game is about just exploring this land and finding new and interesting things that you can then maybe use. My problem though is that between these two examples, Outer Wilds, anything you find is going to be useful.
Right.
Elden Ring, anything you find might be useful, might
Most
not
of the time
be.
it's not. Yeah.
If you're running a magic build and you get like this really badass sword that only scales to strength, that's not going to help you. And
Yeah.
if it took you hours to get that sword and you had no idea that sword was what you were going to get, that's several hours that you just wasted getting something you're never going to use. And there's
Yeah.
just, unless you look it up and go online and separate yourself from the video game that you're playing, you're just never going to know that.
Yeah. And
And that's kind of my problem with the approach in the end. And
I
and, and that and sorry,
no,
I
no, I'm sorry. I keep thinking you're
no,
done.
it's
My
okay.
bad.
I keep adding on things that I want to say. The last thing I'll say, and then I'll let you talk, is that this isn't necessarily a problem I have just with Elden Ring. It's kind of a problem I have with all of From Software's
Yeah,
games. But
I'll,
Elden Ring kind of exemplifies it the most.
yes, I want to build on that, but Delilah, make your point first.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think the thing that Elden Ring does a little differently that makes it kind of less like like, oh, I have to stick to this build and you really got to worry about it, is that there are a lot of larval tiers, which helps you kind of experiment a lot more. And I really like that I was able to experiment more with the builds and with the different weapons than I did. But with that said, even if you're a magic build and you find all these magic items, most of them aren't going to be as good as specific ones. Like, there is kind of a meta to it, which you won't find unless you really try everything, or if you like go to a guide to tell you like what's the best
Right.
staff to use or
Yeah.
whatever.
It's
And
it's the
I'll
price of freedom from a design philosophy standpoint. They definitely were going for more power fantasy here as opposed to Dark Souls, and they wanted to allow for more freedom, more of a wide berth of options, allow magic to be used in addition to melee, but that comes at a cost of it's far more difficult to balance. And as a result, and they've admitted it by virtue of the fact that they've put out so many balance patches already, nerfing things in a PvE game primarily,
yeah.
um, that this game was an unbalanced mess. And again, it ties into my theory and into my thesis that I will state flat out at the end of this. I want to save it for the very end when we're done with everything.
Okay. I think we
Because
are
it's a hot
approaching.
take. Yeah, we're approaching it, but
Yeah, because I don't know that there's much more we have to talk
yeah,
about. There's a couple questions I just have for you guys, just as
yeah,
discussion points, and we got to wrap up there.
yeah, yeah.
I did just want to add one thing to the open world structure that I
Yeah.
also liked is it's the first time in a Souls game that I didn't have to farm the same enemies over and over again in order to level or upgrade my weapons, because there was so much to do.
Yeah, and that is a good point, because I had the same thing. Like, I didn't have to grind at any point in this game. Exploring and doing everything. I mean,
You
there's a
get
couple
over
things.
leveled actually.
Yeah, what level did you guys end the game at? Out of curiosity.
150 something.
Yeah, I think I was like 170 more or
Okay.
less.
I think I was like around 160, 170 something too. Yeah. But like doing everything allowed me to yeah, be over leveled and have and definitely be above what I needed to be in order to beat the game. Um, just by virtue of going everywhere and fighting everything I came across, but not having to repeatedly go into the same area and fight the same things over and over again, which was very, very welcome. There's only like, I think I told you guys, there's only two things I skipped because they were just giving me so much trouble and the rewards were not worth it.
Yeah. And just what I wanted to say earlier to build on what you were saying, Mark.
Yeah.
You mentioned that this just exemplified things you've seen in other open world games, which just goes to something I keep seeing everywhere, that like Elden Ring revolutionizes open world design. It actually didn't. The only thing it does different from other open world games is it obscures. There are no item markers. There's no pop ups that you to indicate that you did something. And therefore, it basically has many of the same issues as other open world games that have been harped on for years, like Skyrim, like Breath of the Wild. Um,
Well, I think it did exactly the same thing Breath of the Wild did, which is, but even to a less degree, because what Breath of the Wild did more than anything, did more than revolutionize open world games. Was it revolutionized the Zelda formula and kind of brought it back to its roots. The one thing that I'll give Breath of the and Elden Ring,
I would argue that, but okay.
well, hold on.
Yeah.
Elden Ring did largely the same thing, but for FromSoft games, where it took that formula and turned it on its head, made it open world. So it took a lot of the design of the smaller interconnected maps, and instead made one really big map that you just go and find, whatever you want to find or whatever you can find. The one thing that Breath of the Wild has over Elden Ring is Breath of the Wild at least gives you the ability to kind of traverse wherever the hell you want. You can climb anything. Elden Ring doesn't quite have that, but it has a lot of traversal options.
Breath of the Wild is a sandbox, whereas Elden Ring is a resource-based combat system, and pretty much all you're doing is combat.
I don't know that I would totally agree with that comparison, but I don't want to harp on the comparisons between Breath of the Wild and what I'll say is it's clear where the influences are, or what they're pulling from Breath of the Wild, but I also don't think either game really revolutionized open world games. In it more so revolutionized their developers' games and their series' games versus the genre as a whole.
The point I'm getting at is that there's just a lot of hyperbole going around about...
Well, I think that's because Horizon came out a week before it, and that was like overwhelming, like check marks, Ubisoft
Yes.
Yeah, well,
style,
there's
and
that.
kind of like it's so
Yeah.
that's been done. Like I don't mind those games. I just want less of them so that I can miss that. It's just a refreshing open world structure. I don't want every open
Yeah.
world game to be like Elden Ring, nor do I want every open world game to be like Horizon, but it's nice to have just the differences, and it
See,
is
Yeah.
really refreshing.
Personally, I'd rather have less open world games, period,
Yes, same.
because they're exhausting and long, and I don't want to keep playing them. But
Again, which is why I found the legacy dungeons to be the best part of this game.
Yeah,
Because
I don't
it's
and
basically
no
I
doubt.
agree, because it's drops from what From Software's bread and butter has been for over a decade now, which is tight level design, dungeon design that like
yeah.
you're opening shortcuts and traversing through at your own pace and kind of navigating through to the end.
And to be clear, like we're kind of nitpicking at a game that has like reused assets, but with a game that has so many freaking different enemy designs
Yeah.
that it's kind of forgivable, but not still worth mentioning, like the reused shit.
Yeah,
And
it's
it's still
Again, ties into my thesis.
and it's still like it still has those moments where you're like I think in Nokron Eternal City or one of the cities underground, and you overlook and you can still see like a Mogwin Palace from across the way, and then when you get to Mogwin you can see like the underground cities from Mogwin Palace, and
yeah.
it still kept kind of the interconnectedness of the Souls games, despite being open world in structure. And the legacy dungeons were just Dark Souls, basically. Like
Yeah.
again, in a good way.
Yeah.
Not I'm not saying that is a bad thing.
And I definitely agree. That's a really good point. It's that the open world does still maintain a lot of that that connective
Like you
tissue
see the
that
Erd
those
tree from everywhere. I love it.
right. It still does have a lot of that, and it's not that I'm trying to say that like the design is bad or anything. It's just
It's a
I
lot.
don't I don't feel that the pros of this design outweigh the cons, because the cons personally for me really weigh me down in terms of sitting down to play a game and just the amount of crap in my inventory
Less
that I
is
have
more.
to in a lot of cases for me, as especially as I get older, more games are coming out and I have ever shrinking free time. Less to me can be a lot more.
Yeah.
um yeah, it's there's just so much. But and a lot of what's there is really good. It's just there's so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, okay, a few final talking points before we get Jason's thesis and then the final question and all that stuff, because we got to wrap up. What was your guys' primary build?
So I started and did most of the game. I basically followed meta builds because the balancing in this game is so horrendous that you kind of have to. I mean, you don't have to, but like if you want to, again, it's weird. This game, if you were to look at this game's difficulty, I know as a bell curve, it wouldn't be a bell curve; it would be a rectangle, and it only exists on either extreme. It's either way too easy if you follow the meta and use the mimics here, or it's way too hard if you try to do something weird and different in your own taste.
Yeah.
Basically, I did half the game with Moonlight Veil Katana, or Dex intelligence build, and then switched when I got it to Blasphemous Blade, Strength, and Faith.
Okay.
Yeah, I went quality. I ran pretty much almost the whole game with a Bloodhound's Fang. At the end of the game, I used that like big giant shield that you get from. So it was quality, to clarify, is Dex Strength
Okay.
split, and I had Faith as utility, so I would like put like flames and blood on my sword and shit like that. But like very low Faith spells.
Yeah, basically just to be able to use them.
Yeah.
I assume. Yeah.
Yeah. And at the end of the game, like I said, I had to switch it up for Radagon. Not my build per se, but just my item. So I used this the one of the glaives from the Night Riders and imbued it with like holy or something like that. Or sorry, black flame rather, and then I imbued holy on my shield to negate the holy. It was that big stone shield that was in the bottom where you get the frenzied flame
It's kind
ending.
of yeah, it's kind of like
Okay.
the Havel shield of this game.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I yeah, for a long time I used a blood and cold Uchikatana, dual wielding Uchikatanas. until I got the Moon Veil, and then I started using that and a Blood Katana, and then I stopped dual wielding katanas and double handed a Moon Veil until I got the Dark Moon Greatsword.
Ronnie's
And
wedding gift.
yes, the waifu blade. I started using that and I fell in love. What a fucking fantastic weapon. So I used that. Jason was talking up the blasphemous blade quite a bit, so I
It's
actually
yeah, it's the same thing as the Dark Moon, except it heals you.
no, it's not quite the same thing. Because what's nice about the Dark Moon Greatsword is that you imbue it with the moonlight power, and then you can use that until it wears off. Blasphemous blade uses its trail of fire and uses magic every single time, so I was running out of magic a lot more often using that, but it was really useful that it was healing me.
Mhm.
But yeah, I respect in order to be able to wield both that and the Dark Moon Greatsword, and eventually I realized, well, you know what, I should probably just stick to one,
Well,
because
you
having to have int and faith leveled as well as dex and
Yeah.
strength to be able to wield them both, I would rather just
oh, you
focus
see,
on one.
when I respec for Blasphemous Blade, I literally took almost everything and put it to like 60 something
Yeah,
faith, so that it's scaled to ridiculous damage and
but I
healing
did I
levels.
but I didn't want to give up my ability to have the Dark Moon Greatsword because I loved that sword so much. So I had them split, and I eventually decided I shouldn't have them split, and I'd rather have the Dark Moon Greatsword because it's my waifu sword.
Okay.
And I liked its, like I said, I liked the utility of its ability better because I didn't want to be using up my magic that quickly like I was with Blasphemous Blade. So well, and I also respect so I could have enough dex to be able to wield Melania's sword, and boy,
Hmm.
I found that sword to be very disappointing.
Hmm.
Um, for as much hype as Melania got, you know, her being widely considered the hardest boss fight, getting her sword, I didn't find it to be particularly special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Which
also didn't find her fight to be the hardest.
oh, well, that goes right into my next question. What's your favorite boss fight, or which one did you find to be the hardest? I know, Jason, your favorite was Reichard, but what was the hardest boss fight for you?
The one, I guess, the one I had to do the most was Melania.
Okay, okay. Delilah, what about you? What's your favorite, and what's the hardest for
The
you?
hardest is the lobsters and the bears. Just kidding. I mean, they are though. Like I avoided those things as much as I possibly can.
Yeah, the lobsters. No, no. What was worse than the lobsters were the fucking crawdads below Lanedale.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
those fucked me up
yeah.
to
Because
the
you
point
couldn't
where
like run around like you could in Liurnia.
yeah. So I actually just ran by them and stopped trying to fuck with them because they were just
Same.
destroying me. But no,
Yeah, no,
what
I had
the
more problems with like field enemies than I did. Actually, some of the optional bosses were harder than the main bosses, in
Yeah,
my
yeah.
A
opinion.
special shout out to Moog. Moog was one of the better designed. I have serious problems with boss design and in this game. But Moog was one of the better designed bosses, and I would say next to Reichard, he's a close second for me.
Okay.
Nice. Yeah, Moog wound up being easy because you can get this like red
Item
like
that, yeah,
item that negates the
yeah,
blood.
Yeah.
But I would say the hardest fight was probably Radagon because of
Oh,
how
okay.
I had to switch up
Yeah, that makes
my
sense.
build. My normal build got me through pretty much everyone. My favorite boss fight, Ancestral Spirit, I gotta give a shout out to because it was just gorgeous and the music that played in the
Yeah.
background. It was a very easy boss, but it just put me in this weird trance that I totally vibe with.
The
uh,
arena for that,
yeah,
for both that and the
and the
Regal
Elden Beast.
Ancestor are fucking
It's
huge.
another
Yeah.
instance where I feel like somebody forgot to turn on the switch that you can use torrent.
But go ahead.
And by the way, we didn't talk about the transition from Radagon to Elden Beast was like really dope. The music that played was the
Yeah.
music in this game is just exquisite in my
Yeah.
opinion.
No, I
Yes.
really enjoyed the music. I'm still keeping a lookout for that
I know.
LP
Every time
box
you
set.
send it to me, it gets sold out.
Yeah, I know.
Um, I thought Radam was a really epic fight, although not my favorite. I did
Hmm.
like it reminded me a lot of like a Twilight Princess fight that I had with oh my god, Ganondorf. There you go.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I don't my number one favorite though like
I have to pick.
oh god yeah I mean I really liked fighting Melania. I feel like that was a perfect fight. It just I don't know, it was beautiful. um let me go. You start. I got to think about this for a
I mean,
sec.
my hardest fight was fucking Place of Dusax in Crumbling Fair Missoula. That
That's
fight
also
made
one of
me
my favorite
miserable.
fights.
I think you're just mad because the run back it makes you do.
Well, okay, yes, there is the mentality of having to run. Like I said, I was telling you guys, it took me a while to beat Melania, but it didn't bother me because if I respawned, I was right down the fucking hallway. Like
Yeah.
the mentally, I was like, okay, that's fine because it's gonna take me 5 seconds to get back to it. Place Dusax? No, you have to go on this fucking stupid trek every time. And like you get there and he was so tough and destroyed me like no less than 15 times. I think I had to switch up like my what I had equipped and like the summon I was using and whatnot just to be able to beat him. Like I
You
fucking hated that fight.
you weren't using Mimic Tier.
I think I was, and then I was using Black Knife Tish, and then I started using Mimic Tier again. I forget exactly how I beat him, but I beat him like just by the skin of my teeth. That fight sucked. It made me so mad, and yeah, probably the hardest one for me.
Mm.
Besides maybe like Elden Beast. Elden Beast was definitely tough, but like not as tough as Place of Dusax.
Yeah, so my favorites would probably be Millennium Place of Dusax in terms of like arena and boss design.
Okay.
The arena for Millennia reminded me a lot of the last boss in Sekiro. And Place of Dusax was just epic. Like from Crumbling Fair Missoula is just really cool looking.
Mm-hmm.
And my favorite, like aesthetically, just pure aesthetics is, and in terms of like how epic it is Radon for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I think if I had to pick a favorite, it might be between like Reichard. I did really like Renala's
It was
for
pretty,
the
yeah.
for the aspect of it being somewhat puzzly. I did really enjoy that because it was just probably one of the most unique fights in the game.
Yeah.
So I really liked that one, and yeah, the epicness of Verdun was really cool. I did really dig that quite a bit.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that's what I would if I had to pick a favorite, it might be Reichard or Renala, one of those two.
Did you guys use the imbued stone sword keys on the four belfries to
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, you get a really nice view of like crumbling Fair Missoula in one of those. Like you
hmm
could get teleported there, and only a piece of it you can explore. It's really cool.
yeah. And there's like an item there that you can get, and if you go there, when you can go there, you get fucking wrecked by some of those beastmen
Yeah.
when you're there.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
But it looked really cool aesthetically.
Yeah, it did. It did.
Like Volcano Manor, like the actual manor is one of my favorites aesthetically. Not the whole dungeon, just the manor itself.
Yeah.
The music that played and just the coloring. And also like Kaled, obviously, and Crumbling Fair Missoula and Soifer River. Those are like gorgeous to me.
Yeah. Okay, Jason, don't take too long, but present your thesis. We need to wrap.
Yeah, I guess I was gonna just give a brief opinion on overall boss design, but I guess we can skip
Oh
that.
well,
Just
like if it's gonna be brief, go ahead.
yeah, basically, and this is a problem that actually started in Dark Souls 3, is that they've been progressively ever since Bloodborne came out and was successful. They've been progressively speeding up boss fight encounters and numbers of combos executed by bosses in within Dark Souls within the framework of that combat system to the point now we're in Elden Ring, and this is why Millennia is such an infamous fight, is because it is quite literally an unbalanced, unfair fight, as opposed to a more traditional Dark Souls 1 fight where the boss has the same not movement capabilities. I don't know what the boss is fighting at the same speed that the player is.
Mm-hmm.
Also, keep in mind that in Dark Souls 1, and I started replaying it right after I played this, and the whiplash is just immense. Stamina was actually a resource that you had to really worry about in Dark Souls 1,
Yeah.
whereas it's not here, and obviously the bosses do not have to worry about it at all. You also have input reading, you also have boss patterns will change on the fly to match whatever based on the input reading. Basically, these fights have broken because they've been designed not to be so quick and so randomized, or in some cases reading what the player is doing, to the point where they're breaking the combat system that was, started in Dark Souls and, refined over the years. They're fights that are more designed for combat systems of the likes that you would see in like Bloodborne and Sekiro. Um, and I think that's why a lot of people were frustrated by these fights. And it's why I was frustrated by a lot of these fights, even if I didn't find them necessarily too hard because the game was unbalanced and I had basically broken it with my build at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, I can agree with a lot of that.
I genuinely think the bosses were designed to be used with spirit ashes, just from a lore perspective and also a design perspective. Like having that moment to like back up and heal, because like you said, they have all these combos, so like there was very little opportunity to do it. And almost every single person I saw in their first playthrough fight these bosses without a mimic tier spent at least 8 hours fighting these
Right.
bosses.
Whereas I ran over them with my mimics here and my
I'm
blasphemous
going.
blade. Yeah.
I want to make one very important point about this game, okay? And I'm going to try to make it as brief as possible. The Ashen Remains are a gameplay mechanic that are provided to you basically at the very beginning of the game. You are encouraged, asked even by the devs, to summon every time you enter a boss arena and can do so.
Waifu gave them to you.
The the fucking tryhards in the community, the tryhards that play this game and claim that I heard this in a local game shop that I went to like a week or two ago. This kid that was talking about how he beat Melania, but he had to summon something so he didn't earn it. That is fucking bullshit.
Stupid.
It is a fucking mechanic that is given to you by the devs in the game. To ignore it is basically that. It's okay. The fact that you can summon things, people were calling that easy mode. No. The act of not using those things is hard mode.
Right, and
There
you can
is
do
a
that, but don't
difference.
shame
Sure.
somebody for using
Yeah,
them.
no,
People
I
also
agree.
complain about
There-
Moonveil, Rivers of Blood. They're like, oh, if you use that stuff, it's easy mode, magic classes. Like, shut up. Let people play how they want to play.
Ignoring mechanics at the game, it's essentially the like those special Pokemon runs, like the Nuzlocke run, the things that you purposefully put certain rule sets in place to gimp yourself. Okay, that is different from deliberately not using things because you think that's how you're supposed to play. Okay, you're not supposed to play Pokemon as a Nuzlocke run. You're supposed to play Pokemon as Pokemon. You're not supposed to play Elden Ring without the Ashen Remains. You're supposed to play Elden Ring as Elden Ring.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the last point I want to make.
I agree with you that people shouldn't be judging people for using the ashes or or whatever they're called, the summons. Yeah, I used mimic tier as soon as I got it and fucking blew through the game.
And there's no reason not to.
There's no reason not to. I agree, and you shouldn't judge people. At the same time, you shouldn't judge people who get angry about it because the game's boss AI is clearly not designed to handle it.
Who get angry about what?
You shouldn't judge people for not using it, is what I'm saying. Like, do you understand? Like, there are some people who don't use it because they don't enjoy fights where you have that other summon drawing aggro and clearly breaking the boss AI.
Let me be clear. I am not judging anyone for not using that stuff. If that's what they want to do, that's fine. I'm judging people for judging others that do use that stuff.
Because it is true that the summons gimp the boss AI, which are clearly not capable of handling it.
Totally understood. But my problem is the folks that say that claim that you don't earn your win against something because you used a mechanic the game gives you right at the beginning.
Yeah, no,
I'll just give a very like I have my first playthrough on YouTube, and the amount of comments I got, like, oh, mimic tier won the game or whatever, I'm just like, okay, I played Sekiro. I have nothing to prove. There's no spirit ashes there. I mean, there's no
even
like,
without
magic.
that, I have nothing to fucking prove.
Yeah,
okay?
exactly.
Like, if we really want to talk about it, like, I platinumed Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, hardest platinum I have. Go ahead and do that. Like, I have nothing to prove when it comes. to this game.
all I would say is that that's a community problem, but
I agree.
From an objective game design problem, it's just another symptom of the fact that this game is or it still is, even after all the patches, an unbalanced mess.
Yeah. Okay, what's your thesis, and then we have to wrap up.
My thesis is just that people don't realize that FromSoft is a pretty goddamn small developer. Their fame has kind of given people the impression they have resources on the level of something like Naughty Dog, which they don't. This game was developed alongside Sekiro, as you mentioned in the
Yeah.
beginning of the game. I think all of the problems in this game, which there are a multitude, and as we've discussed, stem basically from the fact that their ambitions outstrip their resources.
Hmm.
Hey, that No Man's Sky, that happened there.
Yeah,
Um, but the big difference is I do feel like in the end, From Software did pull it off.
and it's a good game. Don't get me wrong. I
Yeah.
know I've talked a lot of shit. We've all talked a lot of shit. I have never enjoyed a game so much that I have so much to criticize for, which says a lot.
That's
At
a
the
great
same
that's a great way of putting it.
at the
Sure.
same time, I think a lot of people are engaged in honeymoon period hyperbole about this being a masterpiece. It's not even in the top 3 of FromSoft's catalog, in my opinion.
100%. I do think, and Delilah, I know this is I think this is now your favorite game of all time. I hope that we're not crushing you right now.
I never disparage people for having different opinions.
Okay.
For me, it was a masterpiece for how much it changed a lot for open world structure and just Souls period. Like
Yeah.
if I got another Dark Souls game or another like Bloodborne or Sekiro, I'd love it, but then it wouldn't be different from my love for those games. And so the
Right.
fact that they were able to take like all the different elements from all the Souls games, mash them up together, and put it into a entirely different formula, and in my opinion, make it work, even if it had issues, for me is like a masterpiece. But I like get it. Like I don't disagree with any of your complaints about the game. I feel like for me the pros outweigh the cons, and I've never had a game that just had its hooks in me in this way. Like I never cared about the lore as much in any other game. So um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's great. Like I said, I see the greatness in this game. I definitely enjoyed my time with it, but man, did I spend a lot of time with it. And I'm definitely ready to move on. I definitely got into it reading into researching and writing up the notes, like the lore of this world. It's spectacular. It's fascinating, and I really really love it. But like, it's the way it tells it to you, the way all of that. Like I said, I told you guys this in Slack. A lot of the major criticisms I have with this game, I started to realize aren't major criticisms of Elden Ring. It's major criticisms of From Software, and that's kind of where I'm at, and what I'm going
Yes.
through right now.
It is true that a lot of the problems in this game have actually been building. It's just they were exacerbated by the size and scope of this game.
Very much so. And I did really like this game, and I don't
As did I.
I don't disparage anyone that wants to give it Game of the Year. Personally, it's not going to be mine.
You're
My
on
Game of
Neon
the
White,
Year,
right?
huh?
You're on Neon White, right?
Right now, Neon White, a game that took me like no less than 25 or no more than 25 hours to 100%, and I had a blast and front to back with like that. I there was not a dull moment in that game for me. There was not a moment where I wanted to stop playing it. I loved every second of it. Can't say the same about this one, but I really really did enjoy my time with this.
Yeah.
And who knows? My Game of the Year might change by the end of the year. We'll see. But we're only in August. We'll see what happens. There's plenty of time. Okay. I'm gonna have to skip the final question, I think.
Yeah,
Really,
because there's no way of knowing what comes next. It's all speculative.
really, yeah. The question I had was, what's next? Is it a sequel or DLC? Delilah, I know you have a theory about a sequel.
Oh, I think there'll be definitely DLC. I don't know what. I mean, I know there's like this section in the middle where like all the divine towers line up, and they might do something with that.
Yeah.
But I just like thinking about like what I said about Ronnie versus Marika. I just feel like we're gonna see like the world at the Age of the Stars, and it kind of the only evidence I have for that, besides how much they align in terms of like having consorts and being Empyreans and whatever, is that Ronnie has towers all around the lands between much, and I think those might serve as like the Church of America kind of thing. That's it. Yeah, that's my theory.
Yeah, I think DLC, just from a meta perspective, From Software's been doing DLC within their games since Dark Souls 1. They did the Artorias of the Abyss DLC, then Dark Souls 2 had DLC, 3 had DLC, Bloodborne had DLC. I think Sekiro had
Didn't.
a free patch though.
It was just like a boss rush mode.
Yeah,
And
like they added like it was DLC, but it was free. It was just like like part of an update. So
And a lot of longtime fans hold that the DLCs are usually the best part of the games.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's definitely I've definitely heard that about Artorias. I did play Artorias. I thought it was really tough, but and I think the Old Hunters is pretty well regarded. So I think DLC is probably inevitable for this game, especially given its success. You know, we didn't talk
Yeah.
about it, but this game sold what 22 million in less than a month.
Yeah.
Or was it
Oh,
12
two-
It's
million?
12. 12.
12,
yeah.
sorry. I knew it had a 2 in there. I knew
Yeah.
that. But it became their fastest and best selling game in like a month.
It's one of the best selling games of all time. I think it's in
One of the it's up there at this point. I mean, surely now by August, 6 months after it's released, it's surely up there. But it for them, you know, their best selling game at the time was Dark Souls 3, and that was only like 6 million, I want to say.
Yeah.
You know, it far and away a huge success for them. And there's no way, like, you know, the publisher Bandai Namco is going to be like, yeah, you're not quite letting this one go yet. You guys need to, you know, put maybe out some DLC for this.
Yeah.
I think they're kind of done with sequels. They did the Dark Souls trilogy, but they never did like a sequel to Bloodborne. They never did a sequel to Sekiro, or Demon Souls. You could argue Dark Souls is a sequel to, but I don't think sequels are something they want to do more of.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I see that happening, but DLC I feel is definitely coming.
Yeah. I just feel like specifically with Elden Ring, they can go a lot of directions, whether it be the before times, the after times, the in between times, this age, that age. You know, there's a lot there they can do there, not just for sequel or prequel, but like extended lore, like comic books and stuff like that.
Yeah. All right, we gotta wrap this bad boy up. Jason, what's the Kwasnicki rating on this bad boy?
8.5.
What? 8.5 what?
Yeah, 8.5 what?
I'm so excited to hear
And don't say runes. That's too obvious.
Oh, god damn it. 8.5 bloodied fingers.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. I like that a lot. Okay, cool. All right.
One of them fingers didn't make it through the hole. It was only half of it.
Jesus fucking Christ. Delilah, what you got to plug?
Yeah, I just did a video review on Stray on YouTube. Assassina-san? Dash-san? I don't even know anymore.
Oh, you don't even know. Oh, that takes the pressure off me.
Yeah, it's just Assassina_ or Dash-san.
I think it's Dash-san on
Probably
YouTube.
Dash,
well,
yeah.
maybe not the URL, but if you search Assassina Dash
Assassina-san, yeah, you'll be good.
What a delightful game Stray was.
Yeah, it was. Really chill. Really chill.
Yeah.
And yeah, I did a first playthrough, like ending reaction and beginning reactions to my first playthroughs of like Resident Evil 4 and Silent Hill on there, which I had been streaming previously, and right now I'm streaming Dead Cells until Saints Row comes out, which is a great game, and I'm kind of upset that it took me so long to get into it. But you know,
Dead Cells is?
Yeah.
Hey,
it's really fun.
Named after us.
Yeah, there you
Dead Cell
go.
Media. Fucking crazy shit, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I've been slowing it down a bit though, because I've been helping my mom move. So
yeah.
Anyway, yeah, that's it.
Jason, you got anything to plug?
No.
Cool, short and sweet. I like it. I got nothing to plug right now, so there's that. That's fine though. Yeah, you can follow us on Twitter. I am at Nibelheimian. Delilah's at Assassina_san on Twitter. Jason's at Solid Quads, but don't follow him. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't use it.
I don't believe in Twitter. I don't believe it exists.
And you can follow Dead Cell Media on Twitter at
like Around Earth.
Dead Cell Media. Jesus Christ. If you like this episode, if you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much. Please like the episode. Please subscribe to the channel. Please leave us a comment. Tell us what your hardest boss was, your favorite boss, your favorite build.
Tell us what idiots we are for criticizing the game.
who you think Melania's baby daddy is. Let us know whatever you want in the comments. Tell us what you
Tell
like.
us about demigod incest. Yes.
And most importantly, share the show, share the episode with your friends, your family, whoever. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review the show. 5 stars preferred. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. And apparently, I just came to find out, Spotify now has a rating system. So if you listen on Spotify, be sure to rate the show there. That would be much appreciated. And yeah, just rate the show there and then share the show. Share the good word of Reap the Spoils. You listen to the show, you love it, you love us listening to us ramble for fucking 3 hours. Please do us a favor and rate and share.
Hey, if
and
you're willing to
review
put 150
comment.
hours into the game itself, you can spare 3 for us.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Jason, what is the next game we're playing?
Da, 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 da. Uncharted 3, Drake's Deception.
Finally wrapping up the trilogy.
Gonna finish. Yeah, we're on a roll this year, wrapping up the Mass Effect trilogy. Now we're gonna do the Uncharted trilogy. What's next, guys? We never did do Metal Gear Solid 1. We kind of did in Metal Gear Solid 2 episode, but we never. Anyway,
do 3 at some point.
Solid Snake Simulation.
We're at least gonna wrap up the Uncharted trilogy, so stay tuned for that next month. Thanks for listening.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye, folks.